Darren, you're muted.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, Darren. I think we can start. The time it's already 9 o'clock. Good morning, honorable members, support staff of the committee.
Morning, Chair.
Members of the media who are on the platform, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are meeting the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development as a process of dealing with the Appropriations Bill 2021. Allow me to welcome Honorable Minister Togo Didiza. Minister, welcome. I'm not sure whether the deputy ministers are on the platform. Deputy Minister Stumo Dlamini and Deputy Minister Mcebisi Skwacha, Acting DG Mr. Ramasodi, and the whole team from Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Good morning, Minister. You are welcome with your team. Are we having any apologies, Darren?
Chairperson, yes, we received apologies from Mr. Sarupin, Ms. Ntlangwini, and Mr. Mlenzana.
Yes. Okay. Let's note those apologies. It is a busy day today for us, so we'll start with the minister and the department, and they'll make their presentation, and we'll give them 30 minutes, and then after that we'll engage with the deliberations. We'll be having the department for about 1.5 hours. Honorable Minister, we are all yours. Please take us through your presentation with your team.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriation, Mr. Sfiso Buthelezi, honorable members of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, parliamentary staff supporting the committee, senior officials of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, led by our Acting Director General, Mr. Ramasodi, members of the media who are on the platform, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor and privilege to address you this morning, Honorable Chairperson and members, for presenting as the newly configured Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. This process of reconfiguration brought together the functions of the former Department of Land Reform and Rural Development and the Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. The functions of Fisheries and Forestry and Fisheries were transferred to the Department of Environmental Affairs. While the NMOC process has been concluded, the redesign of a fit-for-purpose structure is being undertaken. This reconfiguration of the department followed the outcome of the Presidential Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture. The panel did an independent analysis of the government's land and agrarian reform process, reflecting on successes and failures. After careful consideration, the panel made recommendations on policy and regulatory review that is needed, as well as the institutional capacity building that is required, and the human resource capability that we need to strengthen and appropriate resourcing of these functions, which I think fits very clearly with the discussions we're having today. Broadly, the panel affirmed that South Africa needed to focus on land reform and agricultural development, but this time around more efficiently than it has done in the past. Such recommendation is to address our challenge of existing inequalities in land ownership and the skewed fortunes of agriculture and agribusiness towards South Africans. Black South Africa remains on the margins of agricultural activity, and the panel urged us to address these inequalities as over time could have negative social implications. An approach to face these challenges head-on also meant that we need to acquire more land for redistribution purposes and strengthen the tenure rights and security for all citizens. There's been some level of progress on the redistribution and restitution in the 3 pillars of land reform. But on tenure, we have not managed to achieve the desired improvement or progress. And this is the message that came out sharply on the panel's report. Notably, the panel decried the fact that there was no dedicated fund for land reform, as this will assist, in their view, to better resourcing of land reform in general. The panel proposed that the government needed to create a land reform fund. We're still exploring this idea as the department and the Interministerial Committee on Land and Agriculture to assess its feasibility amid other instruments such as the blended finance for agricultural development, whose first leg we've recently launched in March this year with the IDC. In addition to the panel's work, we also had report from the high-level panel, which was chaired by the then President Motlanthe. The high-level panel was also critical of our land reform implementation process, the shortcomings of land administration and post-settlement support to land reform, particularly for the beneficiaries who had received the land. If one look at our MTSF strategic plan and annual performance, Chairperson, I've given this background to frame our presentation for today. In our MTSF, our strategic plan and annual performance plan, these reports and their recommendations have been our guide. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic and its disruption meant we had to look at how we can build back better as a department with our vision anchored on some of the critical areas of focus outlined in the aforementioned fundamental reports. Chairperson and members, following the tabling of the budget in February, we had to reflect on how we will be able to do more with less than we have per our mandate, which addresses the following. One, address the unequal land ownership patterns through land reform. This means accelerating land restitution, particularly the old order claims that were lodged between 1995 and 1998. Land redistribution to address needs for human settlement and agricultural development, as we know that land reform is not just about agriculture, it's also about dealing with human settlement needs and other industrial needs that the country requires. Particularly, it must also address our special patterns in the country and move away from the then apartheid special planning. Secondly, we need to build an inclusive, prosperous agricultural sector that must contribute to food security, particularly at the household and at a national level. Thirdly, we need to contribute towards building a vibrant and resilient rural community. In our MTF, we prioritize the following, Chairperson, which in detail the department will outline. The settlement of old order claims by the Restitution Commission, accelerating of the labor tenant claims as instructed by the courts on the judgment of Mwelase, the strengthening of our institutional and delivery model as a department, strengthening our regulatory system and biosecurity, in particular to support healthy and safe food for our citizens, as well as our export. We also need to increase our agriculture infrastructure on the farm and off farm, including increasing land under irrigation, strengthening our agricultural research capacity, as well as skills development. Overall, the question that remains is whether the budget that we have before us, will it be enabling us to address all these challenges that I've just highlighted? And this is the question you have actually asked us to respond to, Chairperson. The answer obviously will be no, but we understand the constraints that our government and our society faces given the disruptions that have happened, which I've highlighted, as well as the economic performance that even before 2020, before the setting of the pandemic, was already evident. The ministry and the department will have to find more innovative and efficient ways in terms of service delivery. One of these interventions is to work in partnership with the private sector, as we have already proven through the work we've been doing with commodity organizations that this does work. Secondly, is to fast track the conceptualization and implementation of the Land and Agricultural Agency that President announced in his State of the Nation address this year, particularly to support post-settlement. We would need to revisit the mandate of our provincial offices, particularly those that were part of the footprint of the Department of Land Affairs, and remove duplications between ourselves and the provincial departments of agriculture. As you know, Chairperson and members, that this is a concurrent function that we share when it comes to agriculture. And we do this because we note that in the past, there was a scope creep, particularly from land reform, where we then tended to encroach on agricultural activities in the provinces, which then has actually depleted the meager resources that we have as a state and the implementation capability, which was also confused as a result of the two offices doing more or less the same work. Chairperson, in your letter, you requested us to also reflect on the progress that we've made in restitution and other programs of land reform. You also wanted us to reflect on the overall impact of the service delivery, particularly on the reductions that have been indicated. I just want, before going to these issues, just indicate the interventions that were made during the COVID-19 pandemic when it set on our shores last year in March, to be more specific. Chairperson and members, in order for us to cushion farmers from the severe disruptions during the onset of this pandemic, we requested the reprioritization of funds from our budget. These interventions were aimed to assist farmers with PPEs for their farm workers, as agriculture was identified as an essential service during lockdown level 5. Smallholders with an income of between 20,000 and 1 million rand were also assisted with production input vouchers for feed, as well as medicine and other input. Commercial farmers were to be assisted with the rescheduling of their loans, particularly those with the land bank. Chairperson and members, these interventions have had a positive impact. Obviously, there were some challenges, as it was reported by the Auditor General. I wouldn't want to go into the detail of those. Maybe we can engage when we talk after the presentations. Progress was also made during the year 2020 on restitution. We were able to finalize about 385 land claims, which amounted to the transfer of 65,134 hectares of land. On labor tenants, working with the new officer of the court, the special master, we settled about 95 claims. On redistribution, we're able to acquire 22,000 hectares for leases to those who need them. Our challenges on land reform, Chairperson, as you said, we must also reflect on these, remains to inadequate financing that you know very well, but as I said, we do understand the constraints that we all have as a country. The land administration and the management of our leases remains a challenge that we must address. The other weakness relates to the lack of capacity on post-settlement support for beneficiaries of land reform, either on land redistribution or restitution. On the agricultural front, we've performed very well in the year 2020. Our exports, particularly on citrus, have surpassed our expectations, and on grains, we've had a bumper season, particularly on maize. The poultry industry is also gaining some ground following the interventions we've made on the development of the poultry master plan, so as the sugar industry, even though we might need to even do more. But challenges on biosecurity have been our Achilles heel. We've had continuous outbreaks of foot and mouth, particularly in the provinces of Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KwaZulu-Natal, where we've got the red line designated. African swine fever in a number of provinces last year was our challenge. The brown locust in the areas of Northern Cape and Northeastern Cape and parts of Western Cape remain to be a challenge, particularly now that it has also gone on the residential areas in the Kimberley area. The African horse sickness in Western Cape and avian flu in 3 provinces, starting in Gauteng, is our problem. The impact of weather patterns on agriculture, which has caused prolonged drought in regions such as Northern Cape, parts of Eastern and Western Cape, has had negative impact on some of our farming communities. The challenges experienced by Land and Agricultural Bank has brought to the fore the agricultural financing challenges that we need to face as a country. We appreciate the investment of 7 billion that was made by the Minister of Finance to the Land and Agricultural Bank. But in our view, we think it is important to resolve the challenge with the lenders that continue to be an issue. But at the same time, there's a need to reorient the bank to really focus more on their development mandate as it is on the Land Bank Act of 2002. This does not mean commercial agriculture would not be financed, but I think it is important for us to focus more on development funding as well. Inadequate investment to the Agricultural Research Council has strengthened the viability of this critical institution for our farm sector, and further reduction will erode the capacity needed to support agriculture. It is therefore our view that it is necessary to examine a little bit our support for Agricultural Research Council in particular. The OBP on a support biological product, which is a company of state producing vaccine, we think is actually managing well with the governance that has been put in place, particularly the work that the new board has been doing. We do need to ensure, though, that we conclude the new facility that will make it to be in par with other institutions of this nature internationally. And we think we can be able to capture more markets if this facility is finished on time. As I finish, Chairperson, I'd like to thank you for according us this opportunity and now allow the department to make the detailed presentation, which will indicate how we think we can navigate by prioritizing some functions that can give us maximum returns while building an inclusive agricultural and land sector of our country. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister, and allow your team to come in.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the Standing Committee on Accounts. We really appreciate the opportunity that has been given. Good morning, honorable members, to our minister, deputy ministers. As the department, we are here as a team that was going to present to the Standing Committee. We also have got the team that will be responding to the questions that the Standing Committee has for us going forward. And I would like to welcome and ask the CFO of the department, Mayor Rendani Sadike, to do the presentation, from whence we will be guided by the chair in terms of the inputs from the Standing Committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Ramasodi.
Good morning, Chair.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. There is a presentation that you sent us, and you taking us through that, because I want to give to you everything, and you must just return it once we have finished with your team. So let's say we have got about 20 minutes to finish your presentation, and after that, the honorable members will then be interacting with the presentation. So
thank you very much, Chair. Ms. Sadike will take us through.
Yeah.
Good morning, Chairperson and members, and Minister, Deputy Minister, and DG, and colleagues. I'll be taking you through the presentation. It's a bit longer. I will try and navigate as soon as I can, given the 20 minutes. Just on the table of contents, we have prepared the budget per program and per branch of the whole department, and the budget as per the economic classification. We have also included the budget for the provinces per program and per branch, including the economic classification. We also have prepared the budget per province, conditional grants, the entities, and the implications of the proposed budget reduction over the MTEF. I don't know how to hide this. Okay, thank you. At a program level, we've got administration that got 2.7 billion, followed by program 2 agriculture production, which got 2.6 billion. At administration level, we've allocated 2.7 billion, which is equating to 16.4% of the total budget allocation, which is mostly a 907 million that was allocated for corporate support services, which includes the computer services at 222 million. And we've got the property payments for the properties that we lease, which is about 147 properties across the country at 343 million. We are also building the head office for the department in Pretoria. And this year, the cost budgeted for that program or project is 282 million. On program 2, being agricultural production, biosecurity, and natural resources management, we allocated 2.6 billion or 15.4% of the budget. And mainly the allocation is to mitigate and prevent the outbreak of diseases, with the biggest allocation going to ARC, which is 1.2 billion or 7.6% of the total budget allocation. And that is done to allow them to increase the capacity for research and development, to expand the biosecurity for the country, to improve safety and the quality of agricultural products, as well as strengthening the policy and legislative framework. Program 3, being food security, land reform, and restitution, we allocated 8.8 billion, which is 52% of the total budget. And on program 4, rural development, we have allocated 1 billion, 6.4% of the budget. Now on food security, we have allocated, On restitution, we have allocated 3.5 billion, and that is for the settlement of restitution of land claims. Food security got 2.072 billion or 12.2% of the budget. Mainly it's for conditional grants being 2.1 billion, with the balance being allocated on sector development and the engineering services within that branch. And the 2.1 billion on the conditional grants, CASP and Ilimalizima, which is, I will still talk more on that one when I go to the provincial allocation. On program 4, which is rural development, we have allocated 1 billion or 6.4%, and mostly it's for rural infrastructure development and the NARISEC, sitting at 874 million. On program 5, economic development, trade and marketing, we've allocated 886 million or 5.2%, and land administration is 758 million or 4.5%, making the total budget of the department 16.9 billion. On the economic development, trade and marketing, we have allocated 886 million, and that is for the agro-processing, marketing and rural industrial development, as well as international relations. Now, the focus when we allocated this 886 million to EDTM, it was for them to upskill agro-processing entrepreneurs. They have targeted to train 600 people on food manufacturing norms and standards, to increase the market access and maintain existing markets by certifying and accrediting producers of fresh produce for export through the GAP certification, both the SA GAP and the global GAP over the medium term. Building the national capabilities on international market research. They will be providing transfer of market skills to small and medium agro-processing entrepreneurs. They also have committed with the allocation that they will be providing technical sector leadership in trade negotiations and implementing trade agreements to improve market access. They'll be linking producers to high-value markets over the medium term. And lastly, to ensure the shared growth by developing the agricultural value chain and improving market access. On Program 6, Land Administration, which is made up of 3 branches, being the deeds and the spatial planning and land use management and national geomatics management services, where we do our surveys. We have allocated the biggest amount to national geomatics management services, being 540 million. And they will be focusing on rolling out and implementing the electronic deeds registration system and reducing the number of working days that we take to process general plans and section plans and diagrams to 14 days. This is just the slicing, and you can see the 8.8 billion that is going to go to Program 3, where the highest allocation is restitution at 3.5 billion, and then food security and a very small amount allocated to land reform. On the economic classification, we've got the highest allocation being a compensation of employees or salaries at 4 billion. Then we've got goods and services at 3.7 billion. It might look a bit more. There has been a change in economic classification, where we used to put a lot of money on households, where we used to do transfers and subsidies. It has now moved, as long as, even if it's a grant, but when the department is involved, we're not just giving the grant, but we put conditions. Even though it's for service delivery, it has moved to goods and services. Hence, it looks like goods and services, it's a bit over budgeted. It's because most of service delivery of the department now has moved from households to goods and services. We've got 3.7 billion there, but included there, it's also the normal contractual expenditure, like your property payments and the contracts on our IT, and the PPP also sit there. We also have departmental agencies and accounts. These are our entities, both the ARC, the PPEBC, CB, and the ITB and ALA. They're all sitting there at 2.4 billion, including a NAMAC. On household, it's mostly a restitution and a bit of land acquisition by land reform at 3.5 billion. We've got provincial and local governments at 2.3 billion. Mostly that is for conditional grants. I must just indicate here, we have a bit of a problem that we've got a big property portfolio with very little budget for rates and taxes. We have tried to request an increase in allocation because at most times we get our offices being cut on electricity because of rates and taxes, but we have not had a positive outcome on that one. It does impact on us when we are not able to pay rates and taxes. Mostly we then use the budget for a service delivery to try and cover up for rates and taxes. On the public corporations and private entities, that is the money that we have set aside for Land Bank and IDC on the work that the minister was indicating when she was presenting. And then finally the budget, buildings and other fixed structures at 329 million, and machinery and equipment at 55 million. And the total is 16.9 billion. You can see that indeed compensation has got the highest allocation of 4 billion. As of 3rd of May, we had 6,245 filled positions, 514 additional employees additional to the establishment. We have 1,396 posts that are vacant, and the approved organizational structure is at 7,641 positions. The highest allocation indeed is sitting on administration at 1.2 billion in 2,898 filled positions, followed by food security, redistribution, restitution, and you can see they have 156 vacancies on restitution. Then we've got goods and services. I've already spoken to it quite a lot, and households at 3.5 billion, mainly in restitution for the settlement of claims. And this is just the few highest allocation items. We've got contractors, which is mainly for rural infrastructure, and EDTM sitting at 866, and property payments for the leases at 394. Farming supplies, which is mostly on EDTM, 351 million. And we've got business and advisory services at 349 million. Mostly you find research there for restitution, and operating leases at 312 million. Travel and subsistence, 283. Mostly here, it's increased by the programs that we are running, like your COVID-19 that we'll be finalizing this year, and the PACE program where we have a lot of people going around to do the issues of verification and monitoring and evaluation of our programs. And computer services at 283 million. I've already spoken to this. This is the budget per province, with Mpumalanga and KZN getting the largest chunk, and Northern Cape and Gauteng and Free State receiving the lower portion. Now, just at a high level, how we have allocated, we've got KZN that has got a lot of allocation on restitution. They are one of the provinces within Mpumalanga that have got a whole lot of restitution claims that are still outstanding. Hence, they got a bigger allocation. And then there's a rural development with 167 million. We've got a lot of projects that we are running there, including in Mpumalanga and in Eastern Cape, and trade and marketing at 105 million in KZN. Similarly, with Mpumalanga, the highest goes to restitution, followed by tenure reform. With the work of the special master, there is more work that needs to be done at Mpumalanga and KZN. Hence, you see the allocation is a bit bigger when we look at these two provinces. And in Eastern Cape, again, restitution, followed by rural development and EDTM, with restitution having more, we have more work that needs to be done in the Eastern Cape. And this is just the slicing of the budget per province. On the land care, we have got 83 million allocated per province. And the allocation, Eastern Cape got the biggest allocation, followed by Limpopo, then KZN and Gauteng. And these are the things that they need to achieve with this allocation of 83 million. Nodes of most deprived wards in the country were considered when we gave the allocation. Land capability and total hectares class 1, 2, and 3. The special analysis, we looked at the size of the hectares that they need to attend to, and the poverty gap on issues of food security and degradation of the hectares and policy imperatives. Ilima Litsima, we've got 597 million that is allocated. And again, the allocations were made using the agricultural land area that needs to be worked, the previous homeland areas, households involved in agriculture, food insecurity, previous performance by provinces, and the national priorities. We've got Eastern Cape that got the highest allocation, followed by KZN, Limpopo, and then Gauteng. On CASP, we have allocated 1.1 billion. And again, you can see the
CFO?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, please, can you just, when you use the acronyms, please just briefly try to say what's that. Remember, this is not the committee that you usually respond to. It's so the committee may not be.
Oh, okay.
Please, sir.
Okay, CASP stands for Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program. So we allocate for the infrastructure grant 1.157 billion, and the allocation where the basis for allocation are the same with the one for Ilima Litsima, being the agricultural land area, the household involved in agriculture, previous performance by provinces, and the national priorities. Again, you've got Eastern Cape that got 162 million, followed by Free State, KZN, and Limpopo, with Gauteng getting the smallest allocation of 81 million. Again, Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program on Extension Recovery Plan Services, we have budgeted 310 million. And the allocation criteria is the same with the infrastructure support. On Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, upgrade provincial agriculture colleges, we've got 90 million. You know that we are working on transferring the provincial agricultural colleges to the national department from the 1st of April 2022. So the work has already started. We have started the assessments of the conditions of the building. We have done, I think we are finalizing this month, the issues of assets count in these colleges. The whole transfer program, we've got the committees and the subcommittees that are working on this, hence we have that allocation. On the entities, we've got our agricultural land holding account. We will be transferring 937 million. They do the land development support and the land acquisition. Agriculture Research Council, 1.2 billion. Ingonyama Trust Board gets 23.5 million. National Agricultural Marketing Council get 47.3 million. And the Office of the Valuer General at 131.8 million. The total of the 16.9 billion that will be transferred into our entities is 2.4 billion. I've already went through that. The implications of the proposed 3.8 billion budget reduction over the MTEF on the short term, we had to, because of the budget cuts, revise the APP targets. And that has seen land reform reducing the targets that relates to the acquisition of strategically located land. And although we still do it, but we had to cut on the hectares that will be acquired because of the commitments that we've made in the financial year that we needed to finalize. Otherwise, we could have just waited on that one, but the commitments needed to still to be honored. We had to also reduce and focus more on the providing of support to existing farms through the land development support. We want them to become more productive. The minister touched on this one, saying we will have to look at bringing in the private sector so we can try and get more funding to support the farms. There is no sufficient money. Department has revised the targets on the settlement of land claims, meaning that now restitution is not going to go as fast as we want. But we must also just indicate that beside the cut of this year, restitution has been cut over the years. So it has also affected the rate at which they are able to settle the land claims. More claims have been researched and they are ready for settlement. So if we had more budget, we could do more. And we will continue to support the already planned infrastructure projects that are underway through the rural infrastructure development. On the medium term, we will cut 1.3 billion. And there are projects that we cannot complete in the short term that we needed to carry through over the medium term, more especially on the farmer support production units and infrastructure projects. We also had an adverse impact on service delivery as we could only focus on finalizing existing projects and commitments. So we were not able to implement new projects. On the long term, the 1.4 billion reduction will have a backlog in service delivery to all departmental beneficiaries, whether we're looking at support for land reform farmers, the restitution infrastructure projects, and the normal support to agriculture and non-agricultural entities that we do. So the long-term impact is across all the services that the department offers. Looking on 2022, 2023.
CFO, let me give you about 5 minutes, please wrap up.
Thank you, Chair. Looking on the implications for 2022, 2023, they are not different from what has happened in the previous year. So we just kicking the can down to another year and another year. So the impact is similar. Implication of reduction of funds on food security, land reform and restitution. There will be delays in the revitalization of irrigation systems on food security. There will be no new application for farmers who will be approved in 2022-23. Focus will be on completion of the infrastructure work and the revitalization of the agriculture colleges we will extend, and provision of resources such as ICT equipment, uniform and training will also not be implemented because of the funding shortage. On land acquisition, again, we are saying we are not taking new projects. We are only dealing with commitments. This will affect the valuations. Funding will only cater for current commitments, and NLAC approvers will be catered for the current ones. On land rights, difficulty in meeting and consultation with claims to conduct research, verification, accessing claimants, and signing of settlement agreements, and concluding acceptance offers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Sadike, CFO of the department. You'll be able to come in as honorable members. Mr. Ramasodi, that takes care of your presentation, am I correct?
You are correct. We submit, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much. Honorable members, let me come to you. You know how we do it. Can I have indication of honorable members who would like to pose questions and interact with the presentation by the minister and the department? Honorable members, we are running against time.
Honorable Matafa.
Honorable Matafa.
Peters.
Honorable Peters. Honorable members, any other member who would like to come in? Okay, please indicate once you are in the platform or what you would like to present to ask a question. Honorable Matafa, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Honorable Minister. And Dade Ramasodi Me Sadiq Ndimacheron. Chair, since we are running against time, I will only limit myself to 5 questions. I know there are a lot, but I'll go quickly through them. The first one is on the initial input by the Minister, where she touches on the role of the private sector or the need to involve the private sector on agricultural matters. I'm just interested to know if whether have they picked wind of a conference which calls itself Afrikaner Africa Conference, which is a collaboration between some 12 Afrikaner groups plus the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, which are led by Chris Oberman and Chris Mapai. I'm asking this, Chair, after picking up this article in Politics Web, and one of the resolutions speak directly to issues of agriculture and the role of the private sector in assisting the department or the country in growing the sector. But they have an assertion or a view that the land bank cannot be saved. In other words, it will collapse. And there's a direct need to source funds, including from international donors. And there's a European country that is willing to come to the party. And the second one speaks to the issue that is close to my heart, and the other 4 questions will speak to that, of emerging farmers and new entrants to the market. But their approach will be promotion of agriculture to ensure food security and mass employment. Now, I agree with them that agriculture, as they state, is the quickest way to creating employment. But again, it still requires new entrants to come into the market so that we are able to broaden the scope of food security. Now, the question there, Chair, is what would be the view of the department? Would they be willing to approach this particular body? And if this particular body approaches them with the initiatives or resolutions the conference have taken, will they be amenable in receiving some of the guidance and cooperation as it emanates from the private sector coming into the public sector through the department? The second point, Chair, I agree with the Minister that the budget is constrained and there should be budget cuts. However, there are certain interventions that do not require finances to ensure success of a particular sector. The President, in assisting the infrastructure program, speaks about cutting and minimizing red tape. Now, just as a direct question, what is the department doing to assist that particular effort of minimizing and cutting red tape in the department? An example, Chair, is the issue of the environmental impact assessment application. Now, most of emerging farmers or would-be farmers who would like to enter into the sector lament the fact that it is administratively cumbersome to have this particular assessment application concluded, and it is also costly. Now, my question would be, what can the department do to assist small, medium, and emerging entrants into the farming sector, have speedy release and at a cost-effective manner of impact assessment studies of the environment? The third point, Chair, comes from slide 8. I'm not sure, maybe it was covered, maybe it's the language that I do not understand or the framing. I note that the department speaks about earmarking 600 ACO processing establishments for assistance. Now, the question that I had was if the department has a target of farmers that are currently small scale or medium that they would want to commercialize. If they have the target, where is the process at the moment? And Chair, I'm raising this issue simply because from the budget cuts, the most affected people would be those that want to enter into the sector. Because in the last engagement we had with the Land Bank, there was a statement that they are only focusing on existing farming establishment rather than new entrants. And I'm raising this, Chair, because the new entrants in their main are Black, are women, are people with disabilities. Generally, those previously disadvantaged groups are the ones that are trying to enter into the sector. Now, if government is unable to assist, what is it that we can do to ensure that the budget cuts do not signal the death knell for these particular groupings that I have indicated? Now, Chair, on slide 8, the issue of budget allocation, it's not for me explicit on how it will deal with issues of transformation. And the issues that I've raised above speak directly to the issue of transformation. One could be by assisting new entrants to come in, those that are particularly Black and coming from those particular disadvantaged groups. The last point, Chair, is actually two-pronged. It speaks to the staff morale and also the management commitment to government priorities. I'm raising this, Chair, and also the minister touched on the relationship that the national department has with provinces. The budget allocations also spoke to the allocations that are earmarked for provinces. I'll speak for Gauteng as a case in point. There is a emerging farmer that would have approached our office, our parliamentary office, and raised a complaint about the Gauteng department not responding, not following up on any discussion that they would have had. The only thing that would have happened is that some people on the ground have come to the farms, did an inspection and disappeared. And on follow-up, nothing happens. There is no response. Hence, I'm speaking to the issue of the staff and personnel morale when it comes to government priorities. Now, I ended up having to escalate the matter to the MEC, who responded speedily. And when I gave the feedback to this particular individual who raised the issue with me, said, I wish Minister MEC Tau was actually in the administration because clearly he's committed to what he is doing. Now, I'm saying it's a two-pronged question because on slide 11, the department speaks of vacancy rates. And if I read correctly, there are just over 1,300 vacancies in the department. My question, Chair, would be, how are these vacancies distributed? Because it could be one of the reasons that all these non-responses, what appears to be lack of morale, is due to the incapacity of personnel on the ground by the department. My view, Chair, is that when you speak of agriculture, you would rather have oversupply of personnel, especially when it comes to issues that has to do with soil interaction, interaction with farmers, interaction with service providers, interaction with financial institutions. Because my view is that if this particular sector or unit in the department is not fully capacitated, we might have a problem that those that are deserving to be financed, deserving to be listened to, are not given the opportunity as a result of the incapacitation by the department. I will pause there, Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. And once again, thank you for the Minister's comprehensive input in the beginning and the presentation by the department. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Peters.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And I want to start off by apologizing to the Minister because I had her input at the tail end. I had technical challenges. But thank you very much to the Minister for availing herself to this committee as well as to the department for the presentation. Minister, my focus will purely be in relation to the support that the department is expected to give to emerging farmers, especially in this post-COVID recovery, economic recovery interventions. I have not heard a lot from the department with regard to how much you spend on skills development and transfer in support of, in particular, the emerging farmers. And is there sector-specific training programs, and especially to drive this post-COVID recovery initiative? In your view, Minister, are emerging farmers capacitated enough to understand their contribution to food security so that the land parcels they have is not wasted on unproductive farming areas? But also, is the Department of Agriculture involved in making it possible that during the public participation or inputs into developments in our communities, the parcels of land that are productive food security or agricultural land are protected against encroachment by residential or other industrial development? This I'm raising, Minister, because you would find in many of our communities agricultural land being used for housing, agricultural land being used for other non-agricultural activities instead of investing in the recovery of the land. Is the department actively involved in ensuring that the emerging farmers have access to water, Chairperson? We have situations where for former commercial farmers or white farmers, I would want to say, sell their land to the department, which then get leased to emerging farmers, but then there is no water rights. And it is important that farmers do have water rights and concessions. And this is something that is always raised by farmers in the Maharing area, farmers in the areas of in the Pretoria or Tshwane area, I would want to say. And it is important that, and in particular, if we look at those farmers that are in the Rustenburg area, Minister, I know you have actually visited quite a number of them, but it would be important for you to engage them with regard to the challenges that they have with regard to water restrictions or lack of access to water concessions and water rights. With regard to the issue of land availability, Minister, your agencies take very long to process applications for land access. For example, I would want to make an indication here in the Northern Cape. There is an emerging farmer who applied through your department for land. And I would want to say it was going to be a very productive land that is adjacent to a game farm called Matanu. And I want to say to you with disappointment that after the land had been bought, after many years, that land was then allocated to a different role player. And I think it is important, Minister, that the department encouraged these farmers to go out and identify land. Once they had identified the land, the department acquired the land, but then allocated it to people who did not even have a business case or a business plan for it. I want to know, Minister, is the Agricultural Research Center available to support emerging farmers with quality of cultivars to ensure good produce. I'm saying this because, Minister, I would believe that you yourself would subscribe to this, knowing you from your youth activism time. The issues of land has always been very close to your heart. The issues of abalimi has always been very close to your heart, especially women. And if the quality of the cultivars is of question, then the produce would definitely not be good. And I would also want to find out, is the department involved in helping the emerging farmers with access to markets? Because it is important that they have access to markets. Minister, I have seen in the Northern Cape, people sitting on the side of the road with bags of potatoes, which they have cultivated or harvested from their farms. And it shows that this is because of lack of access to markets. Because if they had markets, they would be supplying this, what is it called? The crips, the Simba, whatever, and the lion and whatever, who are making this snacks with this particular. They need to be actually encouraged to allow for a certain percentage for their particular produce to be coming from emerging farmers. And is there mentoring, good quality? I heard the presenter speak about the comprehensive agricultural support program and indicating what they are doing, but I didn't hear clearly where they indicate that this is how much we spend, or this is what we do, focusing on monitoring and mentoring, in particular, the emerging farmers. And also is there stakeholder participation, because some of these farmers, you'd remember, Minister, during the public hearings for the amendment to the Constitution to allow for for Section 25, the issues of the land, what is it called, expropriation without compensation. You'd remember that most of the people who went to those public hearings were actually emerging farmers, and the issues that they raised were related to their challenges. So I would want to know, is there ample space, even with your provincial counterparts, to allow for stakeholder participation? Lastly, Chairperson, the department committed to amend the policy that restricts the leasing of land to emerging farmers whose partners are employed by the state. And you would remember, Minister, I raised this matter in my 2019 speech, the DORA speech, and I still believe that this is not a fair. In particular, I mean, I had a case that I made mention in Parliament, that the said farmer is not even still employed by the state. The farmer's wife is not at decision-making processes. And he indicated to me that, does it mean that they should not have bread on their table if he wants to enter the agricultural space? The woman is a clerk, not in agriculture, not anyway. And I believe that this policy is not fair. It is not going to allow for quality, competent, knowledgeable, experienced people to enter the agricultural and in particular the farming space, because when you enter, the incubation period is very long. And I believe that we need these Black emerging farmers who themselves might have studied the agricultural sector, might have worked for a few years in government, have seen the opportunity and are entering this particular space. We need to create an enabling environment. We can't say because the wife is a cleaner in a department or in the Premier's office, therefore this poor farmer cannot apply for leasing of land. But also, lastly, Chairperson, lastly, the length of time your agencies, Minister, take, especially, for example, the land bank, they take more than 18 months for processing an application for an agro-processing plant. I'm making an example here of Monati dairies. They are making, they have milk, yogurt, and whatever. They have applied, and they applied to the Department of Agriculture in the province recently, and they were allocated an amount of money, something like 1 million or 2 million. But with the land bank, they took 18 months just to say yes, yay or nay. It can't be, Minister. And I think it is important that we understand that the frustration that these emerging farmers experience will then restrict or be a hindrance to the entrance of more farmers. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry for being so long.
No problem, Honorable Peters. Any other honorable member would like to come in? Okay, let me also
just take one by Chair.
Yeah, please.
Just one. Maybe if there is any project or program that the department will point to us and say, this is the legacy that we want to leave for this administration, can they share with us which one is? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Again, let me thank the Minister, the acting DG and and the CFO for the presentation. What's very clear is that we'll still need more time with the department because there are many issues which are coming up, and as we say in Zulu, isisu askolodwa. So this is a very important thing that we understand exactly the challenges of the department and see how we can work together with the department and again with the portfolio committee. Also, Minister, can I request that your introductory, you share with the committee your introductory notes, if you can just make sure that we also get your introductory notes. They would definitely help us. On the questions, I heard that there's an allocation of a new building that we are busy with. The question would be why. This is related to, again, the presentation by the CFO, where said they've got many buildings that they are having and they can't keep up with the payments of the bills. So why a new HQ? What's happening with what you are having at the moment? Also, you may also want to say, is it an opportune time to start such programs? There's a big allocation for rural infrastructure development. Can you please just get into this exactly? When we talk about rural infrastructure development, what is the department focusing on? And also, one would like just to know, are there no other duplicates or duplications with the other departments which are involved in infrastructure? Can you please share with us, that's another question, the history of your spending in the department, especially focusing on the underspending? Where did you underspend? If you did, why? And what can we expect in the current financial year? You see, this thing of consolidation and budget cuts has been occasioned by, amongst other things, the question of the coronavirus. But I think the view that we hold as the committee is that there should be a transitory solution. The permanent solution is to get the economy going. So I would like to find out from the department, what role does it see itself playing in that regard? Because we don't want it to be a by the way. For instance, you also want to see, what are you doing with localization? What do you buy? Also would like to see, what do you do to try and promote exports? Not just export from the commercial farmers, but exports from the emerging farmers too. What exactly is doing? You may also want to talk to the licenses that you give out and are we looking at those things? Why is that important? For economy to grow, if you remember the GDP equation, exports are very important. And we, from our side, we look at the department playing a very important role. What exactly is the department doing in that regard? But also the question of the transformation of the economy. We also hold the view that the budget that we allocate as Parliament, that budget should also help to try and transform the economy. I think we're all aware that the over-concentration of economy in this country is just too much. In fact, we are said to be the most unequal society in the world, and it's something that we can't have. But we as Parliament are appropriating about 2 trillion rand and to different departments. And one of the things that we are saying is that the departments should also be procuring from the emerging businesses, but in particular here, we're saying in emerging farmers. This talks to what Honorable Peters was saying. What are we doing to try and help emerging farmers to access the market? But on that one, we are saying the government is the biggest consumer of goods and services. As far as B is concerned, what are you doing? But 2, what is the department doing to try and help these farmers to access, to sell their produce? Are there any initiative, for instance, to interact with the Department of Health to buy from these emerging farmers, correctional services, the Department of Education, the Defense, the police? We're a huge market, but those markets, from what we're getting, is that they're still dominated by those who have always dominated them before. Is there a minister? And if none, can you please focus on that? Because we do, we as the department, we help emerging farmers, they produce, but these things, they end up just rotting. I saw some cabbages some time back emceeing, beautiful cabbages and other vegetables, but they were rotting because there's no market. But there's government to spend a lot of money. Mkanyagut, a similar situation where they were saying that the nearest market that they are getting is in Richards Bay, which is about 250 kilometers away from them. So what are we doing about that? And I think we should be deliberate, and if it can't happen, please come back to Parliament so that we can help you with the departments which are buying, and we say let them first and foremost also be buying from the emerging farmers. Post-settlement support. Can you share with the committee exactly what are the problems there? Because I think the problems that we receive from people who have been given land, they say we have got land, but there's no support. What exactly are the problems, and what does the department propose? What is the department going to do about that? Otherwise, it becomes a zero-sum game where we get involved. People have access to land, but after that, we just leave them on their own. What are the programs, and what are the problems that we are facing, and what can we do differently? In Bergville, we once went to Bergville, and there's a big Woodstock. I'm just using that as an example. A Woodstock Dam there, which is a dam flowing to Gauteng, and the farmers next to that dam, and I'm just using an example, but I'm told that there are many other such dams where farmers are saying that we see water coming from our areas, but we can't access that water. It flows all the way to Gauteng. Any intervention from our side? And lastly, what is happening with the agri-parks in the Department General? I'm sure this is a handful, and I would ask the minister and her team to try and go over them. If some of them are not able to answer now, would appreciate if you finish us with the written responses to the questions. Thank you so much. Minister, we're back to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members of the committee, for engaging with us, because indeed some of the questions you've also provided some elaboration on how these can be resolved. And at the same time, how you actually are nudging us that we can rely on the committee for support going forward. I just want to respond to some of the questions that have been raised. The issue that was raised by Honorable Matafa with regards to the role of the private sector, I must say that we are very inclusive. We have worked with a range of stakeholders, and if the Africana conference that you are referring to approaches and engaging with us, we will be able to work with them where they have got strengths and where they think they can contribute. I just want to say, I don't agree with the statement that they're making that Land Bank cannot be saved. And seated here, all of us as members of Parliament, we know that in the budget speech, the minister made an investment of 7 billion over the MTF period to the Land Bank. And indeed, I don't think this will be the final allocation. We will find ways of how we actually strengthen and save that bank, because in my view, it is a critical institution that must be saved. We also saw last year that when the bank, experienced the problems that it did, it actually had a direct impact on the agricultural sector. Yes, external investment and interest, it's welcome. And I don't think there would ever be enough in our system that we cannot allow new players who want to participate in the agricultural sector. For instance, myself and the Minister of Finance have actually had early in this month an engagement with the lenders to the bank and other interested parties as a way of trying to see how best we can strengthen and save the Land Bank. So I wouldn't necessarily say we've reached the point of no return when it comes to the Land Bank. With regards to the work that they would want to do on supporting emerging farmers, new entrants, and mass employment, yes, indeed, we will appreciate to look at what their methodologies are in engaging with us in this regard. Other interventions that do not require finance, Honorable Matafa raised specifically the issue of environmental impact assessment. I just want to say that this actually is a function that is regulated by the Ministry of Environment and the Department of Environmental Affairs. But we have been engaging with them, particularly as cabinet colleagues, to look at how best we can attend to some of those issues that causes a delay and a negative impact on our systems. And I would like to say, even with regards to water affairs, and maybe a chairperson and members of the committee, it may be good to also have the similar engagement with water affairs, because I know that one, they've reduced their application time, but at the same time, they've looked specifically on how they can address, emerging farmers' needs in terms of water rights, which also talks to even accessing of water from rivers, for a period of 20 years without any capital. They've also looked specifically at how the transfer of land can be supported with water rights. So I may not be able to give you the entire detail of what they are doing, but it would be interesting, Chairperson, that you can also on yourself engage with them on some of the products that they've put on the table, which seeks to address this issue that we have been raising with the department as well as with the water boards, particularly in support of emerging farmers. The other issue related to how we actually support emerging farmers. I just want to say one of the issues, Chairperson, and I'm happy because you have been in this space before, there is this challenge of concurrence in terms of agriculture, where we share these functions between the departments nationally and provincially. If you look at the equitable share of the departments of agriculture in the provinces, is actually not adequate. And I would actually say, Chair, it's one of the issues, maybe the Appropriation Committee working with the FFC needs to look into, because if you look at the executive of the provinces, is 10 MECs, and therefore you tend to actually configure the departments in a way that they mirror national, but you add other functions. If you look, for instance, in Gauteng, it's agriculture and economic development. Inevitably, the resources would be split that they get for their equitable share, which then does not allow a number of provinces to be able to do a lot of support to our farmers, be they emerging or commercial farmers. And when you look at national, neither do we have that capability other than the transfers that we have to give through the division of revenue, which is Ilima Litsima, the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program, Lenke. All of those are actually transfers that come out of our budget, as the CFO has indicated, to the provinces. Where there has been a weakness, which was also noted by the Auditor General, is our capacity at national to be able to follow the money and see whether or not where this money needs to be allocated on those functions is actually going to where it's supposed to. We've also raised the issue of veterinary services, which in our view, it's a matter where, as much as it is a provincial function, but we hold a particular interest in order to make sure that our biosecurity is strengthened, and animal health in particular. Because once the disease crosses to another province, it does not ask that, I'm in this province. Therefore, we need to also ensure that at national level, we give the necessary support so that it doesn't also have an impact on our trade and export. One of the things we have worked, and I must be happy that Minister of Finance have agreed to it, to increase our skills capacity, particularly on the extension services. If you look at the budget Minister of Finance has tabled, has given us about 10,000 extension officers for the period of 3 years. We have been working with the provinces on year to year, how many extension officers they would actually get out of the 10,000. Because our view is that the extension services is actually a bedrock for agricultural development, because these are the technical people who are there on a daily basis, or who should be there on a daily basis in addressing the farmers' needs. One of the programs that we are having as a department in supporting smallholder farmers, particularly as part of our COVID post-recovery, which also addresses the issue of market access, is what we call smallholder horticulture and animal health empowerment program. This program seeks to reorientate the way we work with the farmers so that they start to interface with the market and understand how the market works. And in our view, this would actually help reposition farmers in the way they do their production, while at the same time, we support with them through training that will ensure that their quality of goods meet the standards of the market, both locally and externally, through your PPCB or products perishable product council rather. And I just want to say that in the past month and this month beginning, we've actually held webinars with farmers, agribusinesses, and our MEC across the 9 provinces. And we've covered about 2,000 farmers where we were engaging about the needs of as farmers, but also how we can reposition ourselves as government to support them. And I think we will continuously utilize some of these methods, given that we may not be able to meet farmers, on a one-on-one in mass, as we are under the COVID-19 challenge, but we're doing the best that we can, utilizing the technology that is available to us. How to protect the agricultural land? Actually, we have last year tabled in Parliament the Protection of Agricultural Land Bill, which seeks to address the issue that Honorable Peters has raised. On the issue of time delays, indeed, these are the issues that we are actually looking at in terms of strengthening our land administration system, because we have seen that accessing land by farmers and our processes take much longer, that it actually acts as an impediment for farmers to access their land as they would wish. On the issue of land and beneficiary selection policy, Honorable Peters, I want to indicate that that policy has changed. If you look at it, it is only those who are directly working for the state who are not beneficiaries to this policy. But those who are married to them, they can apply and be assessed in their individual right. So as your military veterans, as well as your traditional leaders who have also covered through the policy. And I would invite members to relook at that policy, because indeed we had the concerns that were raised by members of Parliament and others in terms of the limitations. I would, Chairperson, allow the department to also respond to some of the issues that we have raised. As you said, those that we have not been able to respond to, now we will send them in a written form to you. Thank you.
Ramasodi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. The Minister has given quite a lot of responses to the issues. Maybe let me just start with the issues that were raised around irrigation water, which the Chair had touched on, Honorable Peters had touched on, and to a greater extent in terms of the question that was asked from Honorable Matafa. We also had to look at irrigation. The target that we have in terms of the NDP is to have additional 500,000 hectares that are under irrigation. There is a proviso that we have in terms of that, is that we should also have got a responsibility in terms of the building of 2 dams that we were dependent on, the Glen Williams and the Umzimvuvu dam, which we still, with the Department of Water and Sanitation, looking at. But generally, in terms of how we deal with allocations within the Department of Water and Sanitation, we are part and parcel as a department of the coordination structures on agricultural water, which are in different departments, and we participate there to ensure that this has been fast-tracked. The timelines in terms of that department have drastically gone down, and we from our side, in terms of the irrigation strategy, we are ensuring that there's also water efficiency programs that are being brought in to ensure that irrigation is being done in a way that would save water for the country, as agriculture is utilizing almost 60% of the water that is in the country. There was an issue that Minister responded to on market access, but there was at some stage a very pregnant one to say whether the department is engaging with other departments to ensure that the government market is open to the smallholder farmers. Yes, we are. We are currently signing off on memorandum of understanding with the departments of Defense and also with the Department of Correctional Services, looking at how we access these markets. We are also in discussions generally in terms of the set-asides that we would need to have for the farmers. And granted, honorable members, one of the things that we have got to do from the department side is to ensure that there is also consistency of supply from the smallholder farmers, as it is one of those issues that we would not like to have a system that would not have or have been impacted upon by us not being able to supply. But there is work that we are currently doing as a department generally, and as reflected in terms of the amounts that have been given into the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program and the other programs of the department. There is a focus on the smallholder farmers. And these issues are very important because the dependence of the department on assistance that would come from the committee is highly appreciated. There are issues around transformation that were raised to say, how will this budget assist transformation? I think the budget that we are having is majorly towards transformation. And we have got engagements currently within the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan, where we lay bare to the social partners, business, labor, and also civil society, the areas that we are struggling with in terms of transformation, not only looking at the sector, but even specifying as per industry what the current levels in terms of transformation are. And we are working on it to ensure that there is transformation and have targets in terms of that, which we will agree with industry on and ensure that there is movement. I think Chair would also recall in terms of the previous life that one of the issues that we had to deal with was that each and every time we would have business making demands, but at the same time, as government, not having a leeway of how to deal with transformation. That's one area in terms of the master plans, one, the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan, the second one being the Poultry Master Plan, the other one being the Sugar Master Plan. And lastly, the one that Minister had made a pronouncement in Parliament, both at the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, on the Cannabis Master Plan, which the department is leading in with other departments, where the permits of hemp would be issued by the department in October. And it would be remiss of the department if through the strategies we won't be driving transformation, because we want to see the businesses of farmers, smallholder farmers, advancing. There was another question in terms of the staff morale that came from Honorable O.M. Matafa. And I think Honorable Matafa is right in terms of a few issues that he had raised, the issue around the vacancies, and then also impacting on the morale of staff. But I would like to just indicate that from a departmental level, we are bringing back the ethos of Batopele, where our fellow colleagues and ourselves, for that matter, honorable members, would need to reattach ourselves and even recommit ourselves to this level. One admits that COVID and also the engagements in terms of the whole of the last financial year had an impact, but it is unforgivable, Honorable Chair and honorable members, that the department is not responding to the constituency that we have got to serve in terms of the sector. Coming to the vacancy rate, yes, we have got a vacancy rate within the department that was caused in terms of our national macro organization of government. Minister has touched on it when she indicated the reconfiguration that we had to have for the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform and Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, then to form a new Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. During that process, there was a prescription that came from the DPSA, or Department of Public Service and Administration, that had to indicate that we need to come up with a structure that would be for the merger and then come up with a fit for purpose structure, which we are currently busy with after ensuring that at SMS level, we have got the structure tied up. We think that with a fit for purpose structure, we will come up with a structure that would be agile and be responsive to the needs on the ground. But with the current configuration that we are having, we will have challenges, but that is not even, for me, a reflection on what we need to have, on what Honorable Matafa was saying, where he had to even consult with the MEC on this issue. We are also working on ensuring that we fill vacancies at the top level to give stability to the department and accountability. At the same time, we are also looking at making sure that we fill vacancies at the critical posts, whether regulatory or advisory services, and ensure that those support functions that are critical for us also are having a capacity to address and capability to deal with the issues that the communities would raise. At this moment, in terms of the configuration, we are still dealing with levels 1 to 12 to ensure that they are fitted into the structure so that the department can move quickly. I think one of the areas that is very important to highlight to the committee is the difficulty in terms of the configuration. One would not underestimate the work that is being done there. Thank you very much. Honorable Matafa asks a question to say, can you take me to a project that can be regarded as a successful project? This is what we need to live. I think one of those projects in terms of the engagement would be a Phetogo in Gauteng, which is a poultry project, where by design, I think both departments in their former formulations met to come up with a way of assisting farmers to now come up with a farmer who has got a capacity just to produce 350 chickens per cycle. That is one of those. But we have got a document that we can send to the standing committee on the successful projects that we are having. We also have had previously in the former Department of Rural Development and Land Reform that a study through the ARC and a private sector partner just to look at the success that we have had in terms of the land parcels that we have in the proactive land acquisition strategy that we are implementing. Honorable Peters, the issue around driving the post-COVID strategy is a very good point. And that strategy is led by the minister, even from a continental point of view, because minister is currently the chair of the STC, that is the State Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment. And at that stage,
sorry.
Yes, Minister.
Can I give you
Chair?
Can I give you 4 minutes to
yes.
round up?
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister is leading at that level, and the ministers have agreed in terms of a program that is being led at an African level on the post-COVID strategy that will help us, all of the African states, to build back better. The issues around the water restrictions, I think I've looked at those, but it's very important that there is commitment in terms of the Mahareng area and the Tshwane and Rustenburg areas just to revisit and see the issues that were raised by Honorable Peters. The last one would be on the one that was asked by the chair on rural infrastructure development. Chairperson, we are currently involved in rural infrastructure development. We are embarking on irrigation infrastructure development in many areas. In the budget vote that the minister had given, we had outlined our engagements in terms of Vredendaal, Disaneng, Onsiapkans, Chiombo in Limpopo. And we are also involved in terms of ensuring that there is proper fencing around the different areas that we are working on. One of the issues that we are dealing with in terms of the comprehensive support, agricultural support, is relating to on-farm and off-farm infrastructure, including the roads that would be included. Chairperson, the last one would be on how do we then deal with the licenses within the department, and that ties with the question that was asked by Honorable Matafa on how do we remove the red tapes. We are currently working towards ensuring that the structures that we have in the department to ensure that the licenses, whether in terms of any legislation, are given in reasonable timeframes, and that the farmers are kept in the loop in terms of those. One of those that we are working on with the minister is the issue around the China market, where there were previously 5 exporters that were identified. With the induction of the minister, that has been dealt with, and we will have all farmers having an opening to export to China. Thank you very much, Chair, and sorry for being verbose on the questions that were asked.
No, thank you. I think it's as I said in my input that it just shows the gravity of the issues that we are dealing with, and the importance of these issues to the honorable members. Honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers, Acting DG, CFO, and the whole team, thank you very much for engaging with us. We are still going to meet. As you know, people always ask, what does the Standing Committee on Appropriations do? Is that when the minister presents his budget to Parliament, then the Division of Revenue and the Appropriations part come to this committee for us to engage in these types of engagements. And then after that, we go and report to Parliament. So we're engaged in that process with your good selves. Thank you very much. You are excused.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members.
Thanks. Darren, all members, we are jumping into the interaction with the Department of Health. Darren, do you have Department of Health on the platform?
Yes, Chair. There are Health Department officials on the platform. But I don't see the PLO though.
Who's leading the delegation? Is it the minister, deputy minister, or DG?
I don't see the minister on the platform, Chairperson.
Department of Health, help us.
Yes, Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson.
Oh, there's the minister.
I'm here as Dr. Mkhize.
Okay.
Will lead the delegation.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Sorry for delaying you. We know that there are a lot of senior citizens even here who must go to the queue of vaccination, and would like to congratulate you and your department for what has happened and the rolling out of the vaccination program. Honorable Minister, and with your team, we'll give you about 30 minutes and your team to make the presentation. As you would have heard that we are busy with the Appropriations Bill 2021, and this is the process that we identified your department as one of the departments that as a committee would like to interact with. Minister, we're all yours. You'll decide who you call at whatever stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members, Deputy Minister, DG, and all of the officials. Thanks for the opportunity. Let me start by saying we, as the Department of Health, will be doing a presentation which will be done by the CFO. I just want to comment briefly that we have received your letter of invitation. We'll try and address the issues that you have raised. Generally, we all understand that the Department of Health and health as a sector on the public health sector side is underfunded, and it's been so over many years, and therefore it's an issue that as we start, we acknowledge that there's been that problem of underfunding. We just make a point that the current budget reductions which have happened across all departments will have their own impact on the department when we believe in fact that a lot of investment is needed both for infrastructure and human resources to actually expand the services to cater for creation of a quality care for all our people, and as we move towards the development of the national health insurance and provide universal health coverage. So we will take you through just to indicate areas where we think the impact of the budget cuts is in terms of the main programs in disease prevention on the HIV, TB, and other communicable diseases. We'll also give an indication in terms of some of the non-communicable diseases. We are moving towards the creation, the establishment of the National Health Insurance. And so as we indicated, we already have some funds allocated, and the Deputy Director General to head this unit has been appointed. And there's already lessons we're picking up from the rest of the work we've been doing last year during the COVID-19 to take lessons that will strengthen our national health insurance, particularly around the coordination of services and alignment between public and private. However, in this case, I think what's important is just to highlight the fact that the greatest needs for us will revolve around the need for funding for infrastructure. And that, again, is an issue that while there's provision, I think we need a lot more innovative approaches to that, but nevertheless, we'll to just walk through those. And secondly, the issue of human resources. There are vacancies at National Department, but overall across the provinces, this is an issue that requires a bit more financing. And then those particular areas, and then of course the particular programs, as I've indicated, require attention. In this presentation, there'll also be an indication about what has been budgeted for the vaccine rollout. And there's been we've ordered quite a lot of vaccines. And at this point, as we've indicated, this will be indicated. And then we'll have a request for support on rollovers, which we need to make sure that that program is taken to conclusion. So those would be the comments I'd like to make. And then at this point, the Director General, Dr. Buthelezi, will be on standby together with the CFO to take us through the presentation. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Honorable Chair, and honorable members. I would like to request that the CFO takes us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. If I may ask, is it possible for me to share my screen? Would that be an issue, if you don't mind?
No problem.
Right.
I think you can do that. Is that fine, Darren?
Yes, that's fine, Chairperson.
Thanks, Chair. I just made 1 or 2 improvements on it. So. Thank you, Chair. I hope it's visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I've got 30 minutes. I'll go through it quite quickly. Actually, we've got 50 slides, and also at the end just indicate perhaps the areas where we would like the committee to assist us with. But just to start off, to say the NTSF has got certain number of impacts on universal health coverage as well as life expectancies. And the targets in the main are those ones for mortality rates, as well as for the 90-90-90 program. And then, as the Minister said, for hypertension and the diabetes. So the issue with the provincial health departments and budgets in general for health is that we've seen some growth of about 4% over the last four financial years, which is actually very, very low comparatively. And if you take it, many of our budgets, especially at departments of health, are back at numbers of 16, 17. So in a large extent, we have regressed in terms of public equitable share allocations. But if you juxtapose that against the issue of population, we can see that there's been a close to 12% increase nationally of the uninsured population. And this is actually important because the public equitable share formula is based largely on our population, and also our risk adjustment strategy comes from that. And I will indicate later on, which provinces have actually been negatively affected by this. We've also seen a drop in staff numbers from a high of about 313,000 in 2012-13 to about 302,000 in 18-19, and the reduction has continued around 4% over on average over the last financial years. But what has happened to health budgets is that the compensation of employees as a percentage of total expenditure now stands at about 63%. And that's higher, still higher from the 62% in 15-16. And the issue with this point is that because of our compensation of employees fund growing, it cannibalizes to a large extent on our goods and services and on our infrastructure and on our ability to deliver those services that have to come with goods and services and infrastructure. So we've had significant strains in terms of proportional spending per capita on our budgets compared to, for instance, the private sector. On accruals, we had a high of accruals of about 14.7 billion in 17-18. It came down slightly in 19-20 to about 13 billion. We foresee that there might be an increase in this number when we get the final audited numbers from our provinces. But the issue here is that this would be essentially a first charge against the goods and services and infrastructure budgets of our provinces. The one issue that has been continuously giving us a lot of headache is the issue of the medical legal claims, and you know that there's been exponential increase in the claim itself, sitting at a couple of billion rand at the moment, and this is largely an unfunded or an unbudgeted for item, if I can put it. So it goes straight to losses, and it has a huge impact on cash flow for many of our provinces. And as you know, the purchasing power, just in general, of the health hand has gone down. The health inflation, I think, about a few months ago was estimated at close to 12% compared to your normal inflation rates. Just trying to indicate here that the population growth, mostly Western Cape and Gauteng has had a steep increase in population. The projection is that towards 2030, these two provinces would represent 40% of total population. And again, why this is important, as I said, is that this is a direct impact on provincial equitable share formulas. Eastern Cape has shed significant budget, as has Free State, as has Northern Cape in the last couple of financial years. I'm not going to touch on this too long, just to say that it obviously impacts on our mortality and disease burden. There is clear evidence that we are increasing the expectancy. Even in the light of all the reductions, we've tried to protect our non-communicable diseases budgets as far as possible. And we've also tried to protect, to a large extent, our APP when it comes to TB cure rates and to antiretroviral care, etc. But clearly, the burden of the disease is significantly higher than the global average. And there is a complexity of the burden within the system, which means eventually that there's quite a large unmet need that we have to finance from the existing budget allocations. We also see that within the PHC and hospitals environment, that the patient day equivalents have increased by only about 1.7% over the last 2 financial years. We do use the bed utilization rate as a measure of efficiency, but this measurement gets compromised largely when there is insufficient staff at certain hospitals to fill and manage the patients in care. And as we said, although there was a PHC, primary healthcare headcount decline of about 9%, we tried to mitigate that with the delivery of chronic medicines directed to patients, school health visits, and home-based. So to a large extent, we have increased our community-based programs in lieu of the PHC allocations. Jay, on this slide, I'd just like to touch on the top part of this. We've given the breakdown per province over the MTF, but I think significantly on this slide is that we're saying that in the 2021-22 financial year, we were requested to reduce budgets by about 24 billion for the sector. Now, if there's a wage freeze as expected or not expected, 10 billion will come from that wage freeze and 13 billion from goods and services. If the wage freeze is not materialized, then obviously that residual cut will come from goods and services, to make up the 24 billion and even your infrastructure. And you can see that this exponentially grows over the MTF as it stands. And this is taking into account the National Treasury guidelines and the expectations when they issue the E&E letters every financial year. I picked up on 1 or 2 issues. The conditional grant, for instance, for HIV has had significant reductions of about 5%, which amounts to 1.2 billion, as well as a TB component of also about 5%, which is 25 million. But you will see that this increases over the MTF. So the baseline reductions from the previous MTF period is quite significant on the HIV grant. And obviously this would impact directly on the 1990 targets, which we still have to meet to a large extent, and also the subsequent APP targets that go with that in terms of medical male circumcisions, ARTs, and also the screening of TB patients. So although we've had some improvement in health outcomes, the financial strain is going to be quite significant. In this simple slide, we're saying that the accruals of 13 billion, which is about 15% of total budget, excluding compensation, there's every indication that will grow quite significantly. The medical legal expenditure was 2 billion in 18-19. It has increased significantly over the period, and we're looking at a different model of dealing with medical legal expenditure. But this is a straight loss to the baseline, if I can put it like that. And we also look at the percentage of years life lost has proportionally increased for non-communicable diseases because of most of these cuts. So what does a 16% reduction in national or in the sector budget mean potentially? It could potentially mean that 67,000 less nurses get appointed, 6,000 odd fewer doctors, that we're able to a reduction of 564 fewer clinics, and also the maintenance of fewer facilities over the period. And this will become evident more when I speak about the facility revite ground in a minute. So we actually sitting in a very vicious cycle at the moment, where we see a reduction of health expenditure, which would impact on our service delivery. It impacts on our workforce and our goods and ability to finance that, which again impacts on service delivery, which in the end leads to potentially medical legal claims and or accruals, which has a charge against the vote, and that reduces the real health expenditure budgets even further. Looking at your particular issues that you've raised in your letter, Chair, and we concentrate on that, assuming that you've seen quite a number of presentations from Treasury, etc. So what would that 4.7 billion over the MTF mean for National Department of Health? Well, essentially it means that we will not be able to fill critical clinical posts as well as support services posts. It will have a definite impact on our expansion of the school health teams, district teams, as well as ward-based outreach teams. There will be some failure to reach certain targets in screening and testing, a big hamper on the maintenance and repairs of facilities, and including medical and laundry equipment. And this is after we've made some investments in the last few financial years, especially on equipment, on laundry. We have a system of monitoring non-negotiables under goods and services at national, but this would significantly be under pressure now. The other vaccine rollouts would also be impacted, not only the COVID ones. The inadequate funding for recurring costs for COVID is one particular hidden cost that we need to consider even further. And you will see in my last slide, I've put a ask for that. But there is a potential that on Port Health Services, if we do appointments, that these appointments would continue way over the MTF period, and the potential impact that would have. And then obviously there was also an impact on the emergency medical services. So on the COVID vaccine procurement, I've added to the slide that was sent to you. So as it stands now, we've got 5.9 billion plus 3 billion over the MTF for COVID-19 vaccine program. We've got an earmarked amount of about 4.3 billion from National. The COVID component within the HIV grant is at 1.5 billion. So we've counted that as well. That component or that expenditure would in the main be for consumables and other costs, logistical costs that provinces might incur. But that component or that allocation has come at a cost of the HIV program. So we had to reprioritize or repurpose within the specific grant. The MRC Research Council will get 100 million. And then we've recently asked the Treasury to give us or permission for us to utilize 50 million for the EVDS system, as well as about 37 million for the warehouse and distribution. So our BAS report indicates a spend to date of about 1.3 billion. We have committed orders as it stands of about 3.3 billion. This excludes some upfront payments that we're still processing, but the potential projected shortfall is about 4.8 billion, and we have significantly engaged Treasury on this, but we've come with a few proposals which I'll put at the end for you. Yeah, so just to confirm what I've said is that the HIV, TB, malaria component was given 1.5 billion. It gets transferred directly to provinces against their business plan, and they report against this business plan. And then the earmarked funds, ring-fence funds within the NOH is about 4.3 billion for vaccines, of which most has now been committed, and the balance has been spent. There's also the COVAX facility of about 1.8 billion. The future of this facility, I suppose, is still under negotiation to some extent. We have received some refunds on AstraZeneca vaccines, which we hope can be channeled back to the department for the current program. The one concern, if we look down the line, is that this component is set to discontinue from 23-24 financial year. So although we still probably have a bit of time to put a proper case through to Treasury and consider this, this could be a potential risk for us going forward. Having said that, Chair, we do have quarterly and even weekly meetings with Treasury where we do present these matters. So the issue with the NHI and the COVID-19 and the impact that would have, we think that there is potential that what we've learned and what we've invested in COVID-19 could be used in the NHI going forward. And in particular, some of the apps that were created, like the COVID Connect app and the COVID Alert SA app, is definitely room for taking it forward, within the NHI. The EVDS system, we've learned a lot in putting up the system, and this system, although it's also it had some lessons from our hospital registration system, we feel that the investments made here won't be in vain and can be taken forward with the NHI. See, I'm not going to touch too much on the following few slides, just to say what is the planning and surveillance preparedness in terms of the NHI. We're still doing all the planning approaches at all levels of the health system, at districts and even at the CUP level, looking at the estimated size of targeted population. So although COVID-19 is upfront at the moment, there is still working going on in terms of making sure the NHI fund is material, can function as soon as the bill is passed. So, from the COVID-19 experience, we've created some level of infrastructure or maintained infrastructure for that, which won't be lost. And the same goes for equipment in terms of PPE availability, oxygen supply, etc. Let me skip these few slides and then let me go to the next one. So the status of the infrastructure grant, and in particular the health facility revitalization grant. So this grant is administered at the National Department of Health. We've got a cluster that looks after that. Essentially, in simple terms, it's broken down into two funds, which is our direct grant and our indirect grants, in-kind grant component. In-kind component, that's is a position where the national department implements projects on behalf of provinces, and after completion of final accounts and of the project, this gets transferred to the provincial departments of health as their assets, and they do uptake it into their asset register. The in-kind grants is also subjected to the Division of Revenue Acts, and projects projects are gazetted annually to make sure that all provinces get some allocation from those grants. So the goal of the fund obviously is to enable provinces to plan, manage, and transform the health infrastructure. I can add here that the framework was changed significantly last 2 financial years to make sure that there's some bias towards the maintenance and upgrading of existing facilities, as opposed to developing all new facilities. The other big issue for us is also the equipment matters that come with the implementation of infrastructure, as we can't just in isolation plan and maintain without the equipment portion of it. So just a quick rundown. Last 2 financial years, what we bought 7.3 billion in 1920s, spent about 96%. Those were the performance achievements with that funds. Last year, you can see that the budget was even reduced by then to about 6.4 billion. We spent 89%, and we're just waiting for final numbers to come through now with the financial year end. But as it stands on the APP, we would have completed 4 PHC facilities, revitalized 35 of them, revitalized 21 hospitals, and also assisted provinces and districts with 116 facilities within their districts. This slide I put here just to indicate to you that the inflation or the cost of infrastructure has also significantly increased, especially when it comes to hospital level. At PHC level, we're still able to control it to some extent, but I can see that our budgets in terms of hospitals is short compared to the expenditure, which means that we have to repurpose funds in many cases from PHC facilities to our hospitals. Yeah, just to confirm that most of the funding goes towards hospitals, but also towards other smaller categories of the grant. So the budget for the next financial year, and this is a combination of both indirect and direct funds. You will see the bulk or the big amounts that surface is the one at KZN and to Limpopo. KZN has got quite a number of maintenance projects running. The provincial equitable share was to some extent reduced, and the national department we've also taken up some of those projects. At Limpopo, the bigger amount would go towards the Limpopo Academic Hospital and the completion of that over the MTF. Challenges experienced in infrastructure, just quickly, there's some legislative challenges that we come across. Socio-political, mostly with community engagement and expectations, which is quite a big one. And then also the risk of loss and damages to property and assets, in particular at the point of transferring it to provinces. Financial challenges in the main, it comes down to the multi-project that requires long-term funding. We unfortunately had to take a view on our planning, and we had to reduce had to actually prolong the expected delivery of projects and many of them that were going to go to tender phase has now been put on the back burner. There's also an increased risk of wasteful and fruitless expenditure, in particular when it comes to contractual agreements. We're seeing that where provinces or even national cannot always fulfill the contractual agreement, there's penalties that come with that, and we're continuously managing it with the project managers and the implementing implementing agents. The resources has always been an issue, and within the grant, we've made provision for provinces to appoint program managers, project managers, engineers, etc. The uptake on that particular line of the grant has been slow, unfortunately. But there is built within the grant, there is built an inbuilt mechanism for capacity improvement. So I'm not going to go through all of this, Chair, but let's just say that obviously the infrastructure landscape is complex and complicated. The leadership, especially at national and at the provincial level, is very critical for sustainability. We have to balance new developments versus maintenance, and we've tried to do that with the framework adjustments. Yeah, and obviously investing and development of capacity to ensure proper implementation stays a key issue. So the focus in 2021 was towards the improvement of the surge capacity to deal with COVID. Most of the projects planned for this financial year would be of a maintenance nature. The expectations of the 10-year plan will be reviewed, given the current need for COVID-19, number one, but also in terms of the reduction of budget that we've been seeing. But we've been aligning ourselves with the framework for infrastructure delivery and procurement management. And this has been done in collaboration with our National Treasury, together with provincial treasuries and provincial departments of health. Chair, the other issue raised by yourselves was the issue of the HR training grant. So what we've done with this grant is we've also repurposed it into a number of components to make it possible for provinces to readjust within the total grant to some extent. So the human resource component allocation was increased by about 190 million, which is 17%. But having said that, coming from a very low base, and the bigger issue here is to make sure that we're able to finance the statutory posts within the sector. Now, this grant is not intended to finance the entire statutory component of expenditure, but to assist provinces where there's a big shortage and need. The one lesson we've learned is that this comes with a substantial carry-through cost, and unfortunately, we have to budget for that carry-through costs on the interns that we have committed to fund on this grant through the National Department of Health. So the actual training component, as you would know it, was reduced by about 14.5%, and that is the training grant that gets transferred as a supplementary component to the provinces. But what that would mean is that potentially the number of registrars enrolled will have to be significantly reduced. This might obviously have an impact on our teaching platform and ability to train properly. Although there's a high shortage of specialists in the country, that will also depend on this registrar program, we might not be able to fulfill that need. Although the ask of equipment from this grant is very small compared to your national tertiary services grant, it will still have an impact on that. And obviously, the other personal categories funded from this grant will have to be voted funds due to limited funding. I think the message of this slide, Chair, is to say that the ability for us to manage registrars would be compromised to some extent. And number two is that the slack that would have been funded from this grant will now move to the voted funds and to the provincial equitable share funds of provinces. So the 1.3 billion that was allocated in the past financial year, you would know that Section 16 was invoked to support the upfront payment of vaccines. There's been significant report on the contractual obligations and challenges with the vaccine manufacturers to produce these upfront payments. Johnson & Johnson was paid about $27 million. We still have to pay, or we've paid in the meantime, the 3.8 million for the storage of vaccines. The Pfizer contract was unfortunately only signed close, on last day of the financial year, so obviously we couldn't do any payment, but we've requested some rollover funds for this, and this is one of the matters that we'll put forward for the committee to assist us with, if possible. And there was also a 37 million rand storage component that wasn't paid in the last financial year, which we also requested some rollover funding for. You'll also see that in the last financial year, we transferred 150 million to the SA Medical Research Council. And this funding is used together with some co-funding in Taylor from the Solidarity Fund. And this includes the clinical research of sites, the storages at BioVac, for instance, the SAPRA application costs, the training costs, data management costs, the further enrollment and support to the EBDS, and the allocation for this financial year to the MRC is about 100 million, which will manage against their business plan. Yeah, so I think I mentioned this, that we've got a detailed project budget prepared and discussed and reviewed with National Treasury. Protocols have been submitted, study protocols have been submitted and approved by SAPRA. So this project is actually running quite well at the moment. And as I said, we're managing it together with the MRC. The last matter raised in your letter, Chair, was the issue of the vacancy rate. And in this instance, we've looked at the vacancy rates at the NDOH, National Department of Health. You will see from this that the total vacancies stand at about 296 of a overall number of posts of 1944, and that 296 equates to a vacancy rate of about 15%. I think the important part here, Chair, to note is that our budget on COE has been reduced by about 60 million. So effectively, it means that we'll have to reduce headcounts going forward, or we have to look at our attrition rate and significantly reduce the number of appointments or reappointments on, say, funded posts. In terms of vacancy rate on SMS level, these are the vacancies we've got at this level. You can see they vary anything from about 11 months, probably to about 4, maybe 5 years. And this is a matter that's paramount, with our EXCO, and we're reviewing the funding of this, which can be repurposed, reprioritized, and in certain instances even abolished if need be. Yeah, and this slide just confirms the issue of the vacancy rate per program, the 296 and 15% of total that I mentioned. So, Chair, I've taken out the thank you slide and I put this one in. So I think we need, given all the cuts that we've had, for sector and NDOH and so on, there's certain issues that we think might assist us going forward. We've put on a rollover request to the National Treasury. We know the way they will assess it, but the part that we're interested in particular is going to be the COVID-19 part. The vaccines rollover request is 614 million from last financial year, logistics about 3.7, and the IT about 39.2 million rand. We also recently, with the National Treasury, discussed the presidential stimulus package or case. We've put in a bid or a request, and in particular for our portal services of about 123 million. And as I explained previously, that this would have to be a carry-through cost over the MTF, for instance. So, Chair, I'm just putting a slide out there for you to consider as probably more, the important matter that as a department we would like you to assist us with. And that would be the presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van der Merwe. Minister, I take it that we can continue with the interaction with your presentation. Nothing from your side and from the DG. DG? Okay, I think let's get to the questions. Then you'll be coming in. Honourable members, thank you very much to the minister and the department for the presentation. Here's the presentation. Can I see who would like to interact with the presentation? Honourable members.
Matafa.
Honourable Matafa.
Peters.
Honourable Peters. Another taker?
Kaiso.
Honourable Kaiso. Okay. While honourable members are still thinking about their questions, can I ask Honourable Matafa to come in?
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Minister and the team. Thank you for the presentation. As always, it assists to enhance the discussion. Chair, I have a few issues which will not be long. The first one is on slide 15, the one that speaks on the areas that would be negatively affected by the budget reduction. I just want to find out, in the view of the department, which areas are of most concern that as a department you are worried about when the reductions actually take effect? How are they likely to impact your mandate? These particular areas that are of key importance, which one are they? And how is the department planning to introduce mitigating measures in order to prevent the negativity as far as the impact of the budget reduction is concerned? There's also an amount, Chair, of 468.9 million, which is reduced from the training component of the Human Resource and Training Grant. That, for me, will have a negative impact on the skilling and reskilling of those personnel that are key in the department. What measures are there from the department to try and mitigate the negative implications of these particular reductions, particularly those ones that are listed on the slide number 41? The third point, Chair, is with regards to slide 4 and 11, which deals with issues of accruals, specifically in relation to medical legal claims. This topic, Chair, has been causing headlines for many weeks now and a few months and counting. Now, we have identified this as a priority, given the impact that it has on the department's budget and the government that had committed to resolve on it. Now, we see on slide 11, there's an indication that in 2011, the accrual was standing at 2 billion rands. The committee is interested to find out if whether is the department able to provide a cumulative figure of the medical legal claims up to the year 2021. Now, Chair, the request is based on us having an understanding on to see if whether are there trends that are emerging as a result of this particular medical legal claims, so that we are able to judge if whether is there a particular period that actually there was an upswing or a downswing that is significant. And then we'll be able to draw a conclusion if whether is there improvement or no improvement at all as far as the measures the department is implementing to ensure that this particular issue is resolved once and for all. The last one on the same issue, Chair, is to have an indication from the department on the names of those provinces and hospitals that are actually contributing the highest to the medical legal claims. And specifically in those provinces and those particular hospitals, what measures have been taken with regards to the particular individuals or systems that have resulted in these particular claims. And we know, Chair, there was a report in the media and the department spoke extensively on the issue of fraudulent claims as well. We would also want to find out if whether is there any monies that have been recovered from unscrupulous and fraudulent claims with regards to medical legal claims. And if there have been those that are identified as have been illegal, what are the measures internally that were taken if in the event that it was identified that there was internal collaboration with some of those that are employed by the department and trusted with public resources? Chair, the last point is on the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, or let me just rather say the COVID vaccine rollout in the event that we are rolling out for a different strain than COVID-19. Chair, this reflects on slide 17, and I'm more interested mainly in the allocation of resources. Now, what would be the opinion of the department on the efficiency of the budget in terms of how it was spent? Was it spent economically? Was it impactful? Did it derive the required outputs as far as where we are in terms of the rollout? And the last point on the same issue, Chair, is are there any lessons that we have learned as far as the expenditure on the vaccine rollout is concerned? And if there are those lessons that we think that are not taking us forward, what is it that we'll do differently to ensure that public resources are spent wisely, economically, and effectively with the desired outcome? Let me pause there, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this discussion.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Peters, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I've got very short questions to the Minister, and I want to thank the Minister for his consistency in responding and being available to this committee. It's really impressive, and I think we need to applaud the Minister for that. It's truly something to be emulated by others. And I want to thank you, Minister, and your team for your presentation, and also to give you an indication, Minister, that I think having had, and let me start somewhere. When I was still growing up, I remember there was one of my relatives who was a nurse at Karankua Hospital. She gave me advice that I carry to today. She said, the day you are very sick and you know that if I don't get immediate help, I'm going to probably die, you must go to a public facility. And I think that principle I still live with, Minister. On the 27th of April, I visited Kimberley Hospital. And I might give you this report. I know we don't have time, but I was very impressed, Minister. The hospital was clean. The staff very attentive to patients, and I think the waiting time is not long. And out of curiosity, I asked the doctor and the triage nurse, why does it seem like something is different? And they said it's adherence to COVID protocols. And I want to say, Minister, if that is what has made our hospitals to really be truly what the Patients' Rights Charter and the Batupili Principles demands, then it means that that is the right way to go. And I think, Minister, if the lessons from the implementation of the COVID protocols, because it was not the first time I visited a public hospital, But I want to say, if the implementation and adherence and compliance to the COVID protocols then means anything to go by, because you know, Minister, that Kimberley Hospital or the Robert Sobukwe Mangaliso Sobukwe Hospital is the only provincial hospital that the Northern Cape has. And it is the only referral for all the districts. I mean, secondary, or for lack of a better word, the principal hospital in the Northern Cape. So if it can actually come up to that level, it means that we are en route to making sure that the national health insurance is implemented. And congratulations to you, because I would believe that your focus on making sure that the Batupili principles are infused in the COVID protocols actually helped. And I needed to give you that particular feedback. And like I indicated, I still live with that principle. If I'm very sick, I go to public hospital because I know they will do everything to make sure that I get well. And then, Minister, with regard to the vaccine rollout, I want to also congratulate you and appreciate the speed at which it is being done, especially with the registration online. But my concern, Minister, is the rural community, and especially the aged and the disabled and sick, who don't have access to the ability to register online. Because when I got my jab, I checked with many of the people that I knew who live in the rural area. Some of them had not registered. Some of them did not know how to register. And it was a bit of a concern for me, because it then means that in the rural areas, in the towns in the periphery, the vaccine might not reach our people there quickly. And the reality is that this COVID is still with us. We enter in the flu season. We have serious challenges with regard to issues of water availability and for people to continuously wash their hands and make sure that they adhere to the sanitary requirements. So those people without cell phones, I would have thought that the health care workers, the home-based care, or those community health care workers would be the people that would actually do the door-to-doors to make sure that they can then be able to register the people. But also, Minister, I want to say thank you to the Department of Health. Our old people don't no longer sit at the corridors in the hospitals waiting for medication. The system of delivering medication to the people who are on chronic, it's really restoring the dignity of our people. And I need to thank the ANC government for that particular intervention, because truly speaking, it feels so good to hear an old person saying, and I mean that she says it with pride, and I think we need to applaud the department for doing that, because even in your own presentation, you do acknowledge that the numbers at primary healthcare centers have drastically reduced. What I would want to recommend, Minister, is the increase of doctors at primary healthcare facilities, because if that is done, then the people will not wait for 4 o'clock to go to the hospital, because this is what is happening in the Northern Cape. People wait for 4 o'clock, and then they know that they can go to the hospital and say, because the clinic was closed. And I think it is important. We have doctors who do PHC, but also work in the hospital. The workload might just be too much on them. I know that the healthcare sector is reeling and was the one that is truly affected by deaths that were related to COVID, especially in the first phase. But it would also be important that, Minister, we know the number of healthcare workers who died of COVID, and whether the department have quantified the impact on the sector and how you're going to be able to recover that, because I think that there's a need for employment of more doctors and nurses in particular. I was worried to hear that in the Northern Cape as a whole, the whole province of the Northern Cape, we've got just about 2,000 nurses. I still have to engage with the MEC and hear exactly, is it possible that this province can truly render this service with 2,000 nurses, because it would mean they either have to increase their training capacity or be able to recruit more. I know that they do recruit from agencies, but it is not enough, because the nurses that are being deployed by the agencies that are renting out or hiring out nurses are nurses that are supposed to be on retirement. When are they going to rest? When are they going to be with their families and get time to deal with things that they could not do when they are younger? The other thing, Chairperson, I want to know from the minister, are we still on track for the rollout of the NHI? And what would it take for the minister to make sure that I think in the presentation, there was an indication that there is an NHI a policy practitioner, that the vacancy has been vacant for more than 4 years. And all those vacancies that have been vacant for more than 4 years, what does it mean? Does it mean that the post is going to be declared redundant? Because does it mean that that particular service is no longer needed? Has the department been able to do a review of its organization structure or organizational design, so as to make it possible that you deal with this particular challenge? A vacancy cannot be open for more than 4 years unless you say that particular skill is not available in the country. And if it is not available in the country, what has the department done to engage with Department of Home Affairs to open up for the international applicants so that the vacancy can be filled? Because if it was on the structure, it meant that the department saw the need for it. And if it cannot be filled because we don't have the skills, then we can have the skills from the continent or from elsewhere in the world, because it is important that that particular service be rendered. Lastly, Chairperson, I want to know from the minister, when we heard about the situation in India, one was a bit worried and concerned that as a country, we don't seem to react the way in which, when the South African variant was identified, other countries reacted. I just want to know from the minister, why? Is it a BRICS or an IPSA issue? Is it a bilateral engagement agreement? But what about the impact on the health services and the port services? Because you'd remember that the people who come from outside, the first line of contact is port health. And we heard about numbers in Durban who tested positive, who come on the ships from India, and numbers even at our ports of entry. So I think it is important that Minister just takes us into confidence on why the National Command Council did not find it in their this thing to restrict entry from India. The other thing is, Minister, I just want to find out if the private undertakers or mortuary services are being trained and supported by the Department of Health to manage, in particular, the issues related to COVID deaths. I remember in the beginning, the issue of tens and numbers were an issue. But of late, there is no register. There is no even an indication, and bodies do get delivered at homes. And at times, this is a bit of a concern. And remember, in the tent, people are under one confined space. And I just want to know whether there is consistent training and support to undertakers on how to manage and handle dead bodies, because it is important that that matter be attended to. I know that sometimes as families, we've got unreasonable demands, because at that particular time, you are aggrieved and you just want to give your family member a decent funeral, but we cannot overlook the protocols because of the pain that we are going through and create new pain. So I think it is important that we get to know, as this committee, if there is support and monitoring as well as the mentoring of the private undertaking industry. Thank you, Minister and team and Chairperson.
Aiso, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and Minister and your team. Thank you very much for the presentation, and let me also take to the cue to congratulate your consistent attendance to the meeting of the Portfolio Committee when we have been invited to do so, and the success of the Department of Health that has been able to achieve so far, more especially with regard to the management of the outbreak of the coronavirus, and yes, and making every effort to make sure that our people do not get severely affected during this outbreak of the coronavirus outbreak. So let me start here, Honorable Chair, to indicate that I think health is one of the factors which is very critical, you know, for the growth of for the growth of the economy. And it is through health that we also able to measure, because if we've got a healthy society, then obviously we'll have our economy will be able to grow because we have active, healthy people at the level of production. So I would say in as far as these developments with regard to shaping or reprioritization by the department, really, if it was according to me, I would say everything should be done in such a way that at least areas that need a serious look, such as the rollout of vaccine, the national health insurance, and infrastructure, should actually not be, be tempered with in such a way that these, objectives which are set out for achievement are not being severely affected. In fact, they should remain prioritized in such a way that they advance this course that say health should be seen as one of the factors that contributes towards the growth of the economy. Therefore, the area that one would love to make emphasis is the one that Honorable Ribu has alluded to, the national health insurance, which should be during this period is a time to, test our capacity or capability to whether we're going to get it successful. We should get it running in such a way that now it is one major area of intervention through implementation of national health insurance. So also, I don't know, I didn't pick up anything on corruption, as because the corruption itself is a cost. When it happens to the department, but I didn't pick it up being picked up as one area of cost which has resulted into a particular situation within the department, and to what an extent has the department now moved on to to make some recoveries with that, because it's a cost on itself. So at least if we also talk about or reflect about recovery on areas of corruption, it will be a good story to say there is a progress around that. It's a cost, and we have at least a recovery way to deal with the area of corruption. Now, let me also then go to the area of which was presented on the staff decreased by 313 since around 2013 or 2014. And also looking or comparing with the increase of over 63% of the compensation to the employees. It does seem, paradoxical because now there's increase, there was a decrease of compensation of employees, which grew up to 313 between 2013 and to date. But then at the same time, the compensation was increasing. It has increased up to 63%. So I just want to understand what has been happening between the 63% increase on the compensation of employees and the decrease by 313. So my understanding was that no, if there was a decrease of 313 over a certain period, it would look like there was something that happened now that kept the compensation of employees increasing to 363%, whereas there was a decrease of staff by 313,000. So I just wanted clarity there so that I do not get a wrong interpretation of what is represented in terms of those figures there. Right. I just want to know what is the experience of the department with regard to the whole expenditure, on rollout of vaccine so far. What lessons has the department learned so that we can see where we can be able to intervene? Yes, I also wanted to touch on the issue. I know Honorable Matafa did touch on it, but also want to come in there to say, perhaps it's important that on the accruals, because the accruals in terms of, medical legal claims have bulged into a huge figure there, up to, 13 billion rand over a certain period. Now, it's a quite serious concern for us as a committee. So we would prefer actually that there should be a summarized figure now that takes us up to 2021 as a committee. If we'll be glad if we can receive that information as well, so that we can be able to read very well. But it's a quite serious concern that we're raising as a committee, that the medical legal claim are very, very, very high and quite concerning and quite threatening the budget of the department as well. Now, on burden of health, we've seen, if you compared the department globally, the slide there, slide number 7, talks of a high burden of disease in the country, and being higher than global average. We want to know what is the cause of that, because it's very, very much important factor that we need to understand as a committee, because it might imply many things that we need to take into consideration. Lastly, Honorable Chair, let me come once more to this issue. The issue of, I think there's an element of research that we also needs to be, put into the space when it comes to the issue of vaccination, manufacturing, etc. But I just want to know whether are there any preparatory, budget that has put aside to increase that space, to enter into that space, given the fact of the global developments in terms of vaccine. I think is very, very much important. And secondly, is the issue of the pharmaceutical company state-owned pharmaceutical company. I think all these developments, they create a space for the department to look for a budget to ensure that now the country can be able to also manufacture its own vaccine and run so that the country is not dependent upon foreign vaccine manufacturing, because terms will be dictated from outside, won't have any say, we will only be able to get what we are offered. So I just want to know what is the interest of the department in as far as the pharmaceutical establishment of pharmaceutical company or any endeavor in as far as it is concerned. Chair, let me pause there. I'll come if there's any other thing that I need to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kaiso. Before I come in, any other honorable member would like to have a bite?
Yes, Chairperson.
Honorable Shanyana, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We welcome the presentation, Chairperson. And then I just have some few questions that I wanted to ask to the Minister and the department. And the first question that I wanted to ask was that on the vaccine rollout, the Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, including the storage cost, I wanted to know how much does it cost to actually vaccinate one person in this country? And can it not be please put in dollars? Can it please be put in rands? And then the second question that I wanted to ask, Chairperson, still on the vaccine rollout, was that they've said in the presentation that 39.2 million was for IT. So I just wanted to understand, is there any other way to reduce this cost, maybe by working with other departments like communication? Have they tried other avenues to reduce this cost of IT? Because I feel like 39.2 million really for IT, it's too much. And then to the Minister, I just wanted to find out about the compensation fund on the people which will be affected by the vaccine, on how much has been put aside for this compensation fund, and also the fund set up, has it been finalized, or how far it is from being finalized? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Shanyana. I take it that was the last input. Just to follow up on what the oral members have said. Welcome the presentation by the Minister and the DG and his department. And I would like to start by saying that there is definitely no doubt that government's intervention on saving lives and livelihoods of our people have been a resounding success. That's compared to other countries, emerging and even some developing countries were fed quite good. Now, the challenge is not to drop the guards. So related to that, one would like to ask the rising numbers in the Free State of infections, in the Free State, the Northern Cape and Northwest, what would you attribute that one to? And on vaccination, Minister, let me just share with you that Honorable Peters yesterday told us that she was going for a jab. So what I see that perhaps one of the side effects of the jab is that she's so energetic today. So I think it's one benefit that we have not been told about. Minister,
hey, Dr. Buteles.
Minister, can you just share with the committee what is happening with Sputnik vaccine and other vaccines? And I think one thing that would like to welcome again is the opening of the Aspen Eastern Cape production of Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. I think that's a welcome development, and I'm sure it's related to what Honorable Kaiso has also raised. the question of contributing to the ERP, the localization, employment correction, employment creation, and so on and so forth. Now, I think we are taking the view that all these budgetary cuts that we are talking about, they shouldn't be permanent. For them not to be permanent, it's very important that we get the economy back to a growth trajectory. So this development, I think it's something that should be replicated somewhere. So perhaps the question will be, government is one of the biggest, if not the biggest buyer of pharmaceutical products, which I just want to check with the department. Do we have similar areas where we think we as one of the biggest markets of the pharmaceuticals, where we can try to help this process, where rather than us importing, we produce most of these things here in South Africa. The J&J vaccine, it's even that what we take out, because it counts as an export, which increase our economy. Are there areas that you are looking at, and to really say from the budgetary point of view, that we do like to see the budget that we appropriate being used to grow our economy, to create employment for our own people, rather than exporting jobs to other countries? We have just, you came in, Honourable Minister, after the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. One of the areas, again, in line with what we are saying, to try and localize, to try and transform the economy that we spoke about, was the question of the lack of market for emerging farmers. And as if they knew, the Department of Health was also identified as one of those departments which can help with this localization by buying from emerging farmers and so on. So what I want to check is that, is it something that we have considered or we are doing, or are there any constraints in doing that? Because you find in far-flung areas, where people are really producing, but you find that that produce roads even before it reaches any market. So we are trying to make departments not work in silos, but to try and assist each other, but at the same time assist our people as we deal with the question of economic transformations. I think this one, we just want to check that the areas of underspending before, which areas of underspending that you have had in the department, and what was the reason, and how are we proposing to correct that? Definitely, when you spoke about some of the rollovers, and I think they are obvious, but I just want to check what is the National Treasury saying to you, because from what I saw are the things which make sense that they should be rollovers, but what is the reaction that you get with them so far? I think lastly, there were a lot of facilities that were built for COVID-19 patients or in preparation of COVID-19 patients. What's happening with those facilities? I know some were temporary, but I'm sure the others were permanent. Are they being repurposed, and repurposed for what? If the department can share with the committee about that. Honourable Minister Kabazela, I think we're back to you and your team. You'll take us to the end of this. I think you'll decide with the DG as to who answer which questions, if you so decide. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Buthelezi. I will answer some of the questions, but I'm going to request that we start with the CFO, then the DG, or if there's another official that needs to. then the Deputy Minister, then I'll come at the end. But the one I would not resist is the aspect that the vaccines have made Honorable Peters very energetic. I think we're going to assign the South African Medical Research Council just to look at this unknown benefit of the vaccine. But let's ask the CFO, DG, maybe CFO can begin, and then we can move on after that. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Chair, thanks. It's the CFO Ian, yeah. Let me start with a couple of them. The issue is about the accruals and medical legal claims. Absolutely, we should be able to give you a update on what that number is. It at one stage just stood at 2 billion, but it's actually probably more than that, and I'm sure colleagues who deal with that can talk to it in particular. The reduction of the HPTDG grant, the training grant, has actually come over the last 2 financial years, if you like. We've looked at the provinces, some of them that were underspending, and we've reprioritized across these provinces. But I think in general, the reduction was forced on us in terms of the general reductions guidelines by the National Treasury as well. I'm sure colleagues will deal mostly with the vaccine matters. The issue of the staff decrease and the conflict that poses to compensation of employees. I think the point we tried to make there, or the point that we've seen in our analysis the last few years, is that compensation of employees has grown as a percentage of total budget, and that's a direct factor relating to the real decrease in budgets over time. I mean, Northern Cape, for instance, is a very good example where they had serious decreases in budgets in total, but the COE as a fixed cost stays there. It stays a fixed cost, and that pushes up the percentage. But having said that, unfortunately, that means that less money can be allocated to our goods and services infrastructure, and also what we term as non-negotiables. The issue of accruals, there will always be accruals. Let's be clear on that. But I think the issue is how do we manage these accruals in a particular manner, and in a manner that it's more controllable, if you like. So I mean, I would argue from where I'm sitting that accruals of about 30 days is probably acceptable, but we know that these accruals run into more than that. So if the committee agrees, I will do an analysis, an age analysis of our accrual position per province. I will supply that, and I'll give you that. Yeah, there's quite a number on the vaccines. On the IT costs, I'm sure colleagues can also assist on that. This is the costs that we would have incurred for the system and the ongoing support to that system. It's also derived from what we would have spent in any event to some extent on the hospital patient registration system. The issue of the under expenditure, there's been some areas of underspend through in the last financial year at NDOH. Most of them have come from expenditures from goods and services that we were not able to spend because of the COVID. Some programs that were put on hold. The biggest one, as we said, was the rollover request for the vaccines of about 614 plus the 4 plus the 39 million. So that's our biggest rollover request, and that's also the biggest factor for our underspent in the financial year. But having said that, I think we spent close to 99.1% of total budget, although the quantum might be much bigger than that. Chair, unless I've missed anything in particular that relates to finance matters, I think those are the matters referred to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, and to the honourable members. I think there's quite a number of questions that I'd like to dwell on. I think one of the issues that was raised was the areas of most concern and what do we think will be the mitigating factors. I think knowing that delivering health services is quite a labor-intensive exercise. So the issue of staff shortages that we've been facing to ensure that people we are actually able to meet our mandate, especially in the most remote and rural areas, is a critical area. So if we are unable to actually appoint nurses and doctors to do the work on the ground, that means that we are not going to be able to have the hands to deliver the services that are actually constitutionally our responsibility as a department. So that is a big factor. And unfortunately, without money, it's difficult to appoint people. Of course, we do get some assistance in some areas where we get our partners that are mainly donors who are able to fill in the gaps, but those are not long-time interventions, as those come at a particular time and are short-lived. So it doesn't really help us that much, but it closes the gap at that particular time. But also we know that then there are special programs like the presidential stimulus package that we've been using. Again, it is also short-lived. So we need to have a longer vision in line with our human resources for health strategy on how we're going to ensure that we close these gaps. But also linked to that, especially when it comes to the training components, as a country, we need to be able to produce our own skills in terms of healthcare workers. So now when we are not getting enough of that, we start to have a problem. Looking specifically, if we're looking at the specialists, currently most of the specialists are in the private sector, and we need to be producing more specialists to assist us in the public sector. So we need to be having enough money to ensure that we have enough registrars that progress from being medical officers into being the registrars. So it's quite a lot of areas that are problematic for us. I think the third one is the infrastructure. And we're very great that the honorable member, Peters, was putting some praises on what's happening at Robert Sobukwe Hospital in Kimberley. Infrastructure is one area where we are actually not doing well. We have quite a lot of backlogs. And now when we do get the cuts, it becomes hugely problematic. However, we are trying as much as possible to come up with some innovative mechanisms in terms of seeing how do we start getting private sector involvement in terms of improving our infrastructure. And I'm sure at the right time, the minister should be able to come up and actually do that. But that's not the big solution, because we have a huge backlog. So we need to, for private sector to invest, they need to see quite a huge investment from the fiscus as well as it comes to the infrastructure. Then the other issue that I would like to talk about was a specific question. The CFO has dealt with the accruals and the medical legal claims. On that one, all I can say for now is that, which I will link with the lessons that we think we have learned when we're talking vaccine rollout. I think one of the bigger issues that you are able to report on adverse events through the system, and it's got so many functionalities, and it's an investment that was really done by government, of course, with the assistance of CSIR. So for us, that's going to be very important for us. But also, the same system is going to be able to help us to actually interface the billing, where we're going to be billing medical aids to be able to pay for the scheme. But in addition to that, in terms of the reporting, the reporting on adverse events and linking up people to the Northward Compensation Scheme, so that the process is followed accordingly. So that's for us. I think that's going to be very good for us as we move forward. When it comes to NHI, yes, we do. Of course, COVID did actually hamper our progress. However, I must mention that our parliamentary committee, Committee on Health, has resumed with the hearings this week. So the process is moving, and there's quite a lot of plans. As the minister mentioned, we have appointed the DDG to actually lead this stream and start pulling together the work that we're able to fast track the work that is moving forward. Now, linked to that is the issue of the vacancies. Yes, we do agree we've got quite a number of vacancies, and there are two issues that have delayed us in actually the vacancies. One, we've had a huge budget cut in terms of our own compensation of employees. So we are actually trying to make our structure and see how we can fit into that. This process is at a very advanced stage. We've actually had a big workshop between our EXCO and DPSA to try and fast track this process so that we ensure that our structure is fit for purpose. More importantly, as we're going to be moving NHI route, we need to actually configure our structure in that particular way that it supports that kind of movement. In terms of India, the strain that was first recognized there has been a lot of work. They're specifically working with our genomic sequencing team in terms of checking if what kind of strains that are coming into the country. It's not only particularly to India. Our variants of concern, they're also from the UK and the other countries. So it would have not been very good just to pick up India, because our team has picked that we have actually picked up those variants here in South Africa. However, what has been done through the National Coronavirus Command Council, of course, guided by our Ministerial Advisory Committee, we have actually introduced additional measures in our ports of entry for people coming in, where previously we only had people coming in and giving us a PCR test that is not 72 hours old. But now those people coming from countries of concern, we now also expose them to a mandatory antigen testing on site just to check if they are not positive, and then there are processes that are followed thereafter if they are positive or if they are negative for COVID. Then the next one from Honorable Peters was on the private mortuaries. Yes, through our environmental health services, we work quite close with the mortuaries. A lot of training was done for them, but also there is a big matter that members would have seen in the media of what we call a certificate of competence. My apologies, certificates of compliance that had been put in for the private mortuaries, which they've really been against. I've personally met with them. However, we have working with Department of Home Affairs trying to resolve those issues. But of course, that includes that people are properly trained, the premises, they meet the minimum requirements, and our environmental health officers have a legal responsibility to actually go and do these investigations in those mortuaries to see if they are compliant and they're actually sticking to the particular guidelines that are in place in terms of that. And then the other issue that I would like to quickly touch on is the issue of the registration of the Sputnik vaccine and the other vaccines from Brazil, from Cuba and also from China. As the committee is aware, the responsibility of registration of any medicines or any health products is the responsibility of the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. So we've been working with them on this one, and there's been a number of meetings with the ambassadors of the different countries, because we also do want to diversify our vaccine menu as a country. And as late as last week, we did get the SAPRA presenting to the Interministerial Committee on Vaccines on the progress. And I must confirm, Chair, that there's been quite a number of meetings. And of course, there's still some information that is still missing, that we hope that very soon that the different applicants in terms of these vaccines, mainly Sputnik and Sinovac, will be able to get this information so that they get registered. We have discussed, and the Minister has committed also that as soon as they are registered, we have started the negotiations that we are committed to buy an additional doses from these vaccine manufacturers, to that we've got a diversified vaccine menu. In terms of the local production of the vaccine, yes, there is quite a lot of work going on in this area, and the Department of Science and Innovation is leading, and we do have a specific work stream that leads this within the IMC, and there's quite a lot of work in terms of working on that. They've developed different streams on what can be done in the country, what vaccines can they do, the fill and finish, just like Aspen is doing fill and finish of a J&J vaccine. So we can actually provide the latest report from this work stream on this kind of work. So there is a lot of commitment on government to ensure that we are able not only to manufacture for South Africa, but for the whole African continent as we move forward. Then with your indulgence, Chair, the last one I would like to touch on is the issue of the increasing numbers in the 4 provinces. And Chair, actually, it's now not only in the 4 provinces. In the past week or 2, we've only been worried about the Free State, Gauteng, Northwest, and Northern Cape. But now we can see that actually almost all the provinces are on an upward trajectory. And in the 4 provinces, the analysis we did in the Free State was firstly, we had a lot of clusters that were in schools, and some of the infections in Mangaung were transported from the Northern Cape, and then they spread throughout. And the 2 problematic districts in the Free State was Mangaung district and Thabo Mofusanyana district, and a bit of Lejele-Putsa district, which is in Belkom. So it's mainly the clusters that have been problematic. In the Northern Cape, we had clusters that were picked up there, starting mainly in Namakwa. But what we've also noted with the Northern Cape, they are always the slow ones to come in, but then they stay a bit longer, meaning that they literally did not get out of the second wave. They've been lingering there. Then they started getting clusters in the schools, in the mines, and it's in some of the taverns in those areas. And then we had to activate our response. But we're still very worried because now from what we have, they're still reporting quite huge numbers in that district. So we are worried that they are also then importing to the other areas of the country in terms of the infections. The last one, I would request with your indulgence, Chair, that Dr. Pillay talks on the cost of vaccinating one person, as requested, not in dollars, by the honorable member. Thank you very much, Chair. Dr. Pillay?
Thank you, Chairperson and DG. In terms of the cost of vaccination, I think the first important thing I wanted to say was that the vaccination must be free at the point of care. So in other words, no patient should be paying for the vaccination when they receive it. The vaccination the vaccines are funded by government, as you know. And in the case of those that are on medical schemes, the medical schemes are paying for the vaccine and as well as the vaccination. In the case of medical schemes specifically, the cost of the Pfizer vaccine is 354 rands per dose, and they also pay 80 rands to the administrator of the vaccine, usually a pharmacy or a GP, for the actual administration costs relating to the vaccine itself. So that's what medical schemes pay, but that's paid directly to the service provider in each case. But the patient that goes to a health facility should not be paying anything, whether it's a public or a private facility. The vaccine is made free at those points. Thank you, DJ.
Thank you, Chair. We'll hand over back to our Deputy Minister.
Thanks, DG. Thanks, Minister. Thanks to the Chair and the honorable members. From my side, just a few comments from the inputs, and thanks for the comments and questions from the honorable members of the committee. Just a few issues. Firstly, just to appreciate and thank Honorable Peters for her very valuable feedback on the issue of what we call the CCMDD program, which is, the dispensing of chronic medicines delivery directly to our clients where they are stable while on chronic medication. We appreciate the feedback. Our desire is to increase the outreach of this because as you would have seen from the CFO's presentation, there was a slide where he mentioned about a stable state of utilization with a very minimum increase. And the question was whether it's a reduction of demand or maybe that we are not meeting the demand. And he did flag the fact that some of it may be because the need for people to come to facilities are reducing because they are able to get serviced also outside the facilities. So it means that the intention of this program is actually having an impact in that part of the idea is to reduce the necessity for our patients to travel unnecessarily when they are stable, but also to reduce congestion at our facilities. So we indeed appreciate the feedback which Honorable Peters has indicated very positively. The next point I want to touch on from the input by Honorable Kaiso, that on the issue of the paradox that we have a reduction in the number of employees, while at the same time we reflect that there is an increase in the percentage of the cost of employment, the COE cost. Well, part of it, firstly, as already indicated by the DG and the CFO, the fact that the overall growth of the budget has not been in line with the demand for service. Even if you were to talk about CPI, it's not in any way close to that. But also, there is also a fact which says that over the years, we have negotiated and provided very favorable compensation, to the employees, including almost more than 10 years ago, the issue of the occupation-specific dispensation. But some of these things, the annual increases, and then adding also the OSD, with the lack of growth in the economy, have really started to crowd out other services, as a number of colleagues have already mentioned. So, and that's a matter which we can't ignore going forward, because even when the economy grows, the fact of the matter is that there are some of the benefits. You'll hear also Minister of Public Service and Administration talking about a number of allowances which are there in our system. Some of this, unfortunately, is going to be difficult negotiating with labor, but there are some of these some of these allowances, which there is no other way that they would have to be reviewed because they become quite unaffordable. Lastly, from my side, just to appreciate the input by the chair, which indicate that we are indeed on the same wavelength in the fact that we, with the committee, and would appreciate if many of our citizens appreciate the fact that spending on vaccines is in fact an investment for the future, because our hope is that as more and more people get vaccinated, there will be less spread of the virus, and there will be therefore less need for more health rolling out of expanded health facilities, but also what it will mean is that more people can actually get back to work. So we indeed appreciate that the fact that the committee also is in sync with us to say, as we negotiate further funding from our treasury, the understanding should be it's not just an expense, but it is an investment for growth, even for economic growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. My colleagues have dealt with most of the questions. I just want to indicate as well that there was a concern around the question of the issue of the vacant posts that we must say we're going through an organogram to reorganizing it. And so a number of them are in the process of being filled. And so most of them aren't really frozen. It's just that we had an organogram that took a while to approve. The other points have been dealt with by my colleagues. Just to underline the issue of the medical legal claims, the first issue is that we've got a team that's analyzing these claims, and we want to reduce them significantly based on just looking at unnecessary claims, frivolous claims, and fraudulent claims, repetition claims, and then also situations where we have got a court ruling that allows us now to factor in future cost as part of what we will provide as government, and therefore remove it from the claims. But in the future, as the DG has indicated, we're looking for a fund and a legislation that will cap the cost, the claims, and also allow easy movement and access to the funds so that people can be compensated in the case of negligence as well as malpractice without needing lawyers, and therefore this thing does not be subjected to a scam of touts and legal practitioners that really come with huge price, huge cost. So from that point of view, we are looking at most of the ones that have got a problem are obstetrics and gynae problems, mainly obstetrics problems, delivery, where there are long-term damages to brain damage to children, and therefore they end up having to have various conditions that make them dependent, and therefore these are the ones that tend to be most challenging. Honorable, this was in relation to Honorable Matafa. Then, of course, Honorable Peters, we appreciate the very kind words and support from Honorable Peters. We're actually looking to a point where our NHI will make our government, public institutions will be the institutions of choice by quality, really, not so much because people have no other option. And so we really want to look at a point where as a young grandmother, she can look back and say to her children, listen, if you have got any problem, go to the public hospitals. That's where you get the best care. They should be our pride. Our public institution, our public servants must be our pride, where we are able to say to everybody, we offer the best quality care, and we've got service excellence in those facilities. Rural areas, the concern is understandable. We are actually going to be fielding more of Johnson & Johnson, but we don't run into problems of cold chain and logistical issues, and also the transport for people to come for repeated doses and difficulty in tracing people who are in unreachable places. So we'll use Johnson & Johnson largely for the rural areas, and we expect that it should come through to us in the next few days. We will also be having already the community health care workers going out into the community to encourage registration. The Deputy Minister, Dr. Patla, has spoken about the delivery of medicine, chronic care, CMTD. That, of course, we think is one of our pride, because it's actually reducing the unnecessary visits to hospital and is getting people service to the people. And so once we establish the proper primary health care and on our way to NHI, we should be able to get care out in the community, where people can be seen by community health workers, the local nurses, community nurses and doctors, so that they don't even need to go into a hospital far off, so that they are taken care of early enough. So that's still the direction. The question was whether are we still are we still moving towards NHI? Yes, indeed, we are. And the posts that have been seen to be vacant, there are people acting on those posts, but we will be filling them in as well. But we are not abolishing them. The situation in India has been a matter of concern to us in two ways. Firstly, what caused the big problem in India was the large crowds, which were super spread activities in terms of religious activities and political meetings. We have tried to avoid that in South Africa, so that's one of the lessons we've learned. Secondly, they've got a variant. We've seen their variant. The variant from India has been introduced into South Africa. We still say that our mainstay prevention measures of use of masks and sanitation and distancing remains important, even if we've got the variant from India. But nevertheless, what we are then saying is that we have been following what's happening in India in terms of the whether that variant can be neutralized by the vaccines, the immunity that is generated from the current vaccines, it seems it's more susceptible to most of the vaccines. And so we hope that our vaccination program won't be frustrated by this new variant from India. But we didn't act immediately because we don't have direct flights from India. What we have done is to increase our surveillance in the ports of entry, and we've been able to spot a number of people who would have had India as who have passed through India that have been checked and tested in the seaports and in the airports. And when we find this, we obviously, if we find someone who's positive, then we do genomic sequencing, and then we can identify. We have seen that out of that, a number of people would have the variant that's found in the UK and one in India, but also we found people coming back to South Africa who have the same variant as the one that we've got in South Africa. So that is the level of vigilance that our team has on this matter. So there is no issue so much that because of other relations that brings relationships. The reality is that we needed to evaluate all the countries that have got a risk to South Africa, and that when the decisions are taken, the necessary announcements will be made. The issue around mortuaries has been addressed, and so I'll skip that. And then just also comment, thank Honorable Kaiso for the very strong support that he has given, and also the very kind words. Just to say that we've been in quite a strong fight with COVID-19, and certainly I think we have to thank all South Africans for responding so magnificently in the fight, as led by the President and government and various sectors of society. In addition, we also want to salute our health workers for their courage and their determination to make sure that they save South Africans from COVID-19. At this point, we have said that they must be prioritized. So I initially said that we want all of the health workers to be vaccinated throughout and completed by this week. It doesn't look like that is possible now. I've been in touch with a number of institutions and MECs, as well as unions. It does look like we need a bit more time. We're still pushing, though, to say, let's have more and more of our health workers vaccinated, because we need to get them out of the way. They must be confident as they face up the rising numbers, that they themselves are protected. And so we can continue to salute them for the work that they've done. I've been in touch, for example, with the General Secretary of the Nursing Association at Denosa, who has indicated that they are doing everything on their side to encourage these members to come through, but it is clear that we'll need more time to reach out to all the health workers. Then I do agree that we have to protect the vaccination program, and at this point we are, and that NHI and the infrastructure as well as human resources. So those are issues that we actually are all in line together on those. Of course, we have a concerted focus on fighting corruption, and that where I think if we need to look at the reports in concrete terms, so that we can report, we can look at that in the future. The issue of the compensation of employees has been addressed by the Deputy Minister and the DG. So I would leave it at that. Just to comment on the issue of manufacturing, a lot of work is being done now, and we're encouraging manufacturing of vaccines in South Africa, and work is being done to match some of our facilities with some of the outside groups to help us in that regard. So we are therefore we are therefore working very hard in this regard. Then we will be encouraging that not only just pharmaceutical manufacturing, but vaccine manufacturing and other equipment and PPEs. All of that is something that we believe needs to be acted upon quite strongly. The issue around the cost of vaccination has been indicated. Obviously, it depends which one you got. If you got Johnson & Johnson, it would be less. If you got Pfizer, it would be twice as much, simply because the basic cost would be about 150 or so rand per vaccine, and then the cost of the administration is 70, so it makes it 220. And then if you've got to do it 2 times, then of course it's the same cost twice, but it excludes the logistics and transport and some of the administrative costs. Then that was the Honorable Shonyane that raised the question. So the question of the no-fault compensation fund has been addressed. We have approached and signed a letter of appointment of Judge Sandile Gobo, the former Chief Justice, to head the fund, and so work is on course to take that process through. And Honorable Chairperson, we also share your concern about the issue of the Free State and rising numbers in the Northern Cape and Gauteng and Northern Cape and Northwest. So we think that all of it has been a slow spread that's been generated by the clusters in the Northern Cape, and then of course by sheer proximity it's beginning to show numbers in the other provinces. And it is something that we are actually responding to. And at this point, the Free State was technically already in the 3rd wave. The others, of course, with time, they will also be probably getting to the 3rd wave, but we don't have that at this point. We just believe that whatever we see, the outbreak must be dealt with, and we shouldn't really be, hopeless about it. We must just continue the fight. The Sputnik and Sinovac has been explained. In fact, because of the delays in the registration, I've been in touch with the ambassadors now to say they must talk to the mother companies and indicate to them that the information that is missing in the registration process must be supplied so that we can clear these issues and get out of that. So that work is going through. You raised a very complex issue of the contribution of departments in the generation of the economy as well as in job creation. I must say here that it's a very tricky area because obviously the state has got huge powers for procurement. And so we have to focus on how we can increase purchasing on the local manufacturers so that we can retain the jobs. We do know, though, that there are issues of competition that comes up, and when we've got competitive bids, sometimes we end up with some manufacturer from outside the country winning the bid. All of those issues are issues that we must continue to engage about, because again, the issue that you raise about focusing on the local market, we can only assume that those who are service providers will focus on purchasing from the local farmers. But as we speak now, most of the department does not, the department does not procure directly from farmers because it has got service providers, and that must supply the food. And so we can engage with them in the issue of focusing on local manufacturers. That issue does become a bit complex because I think between the department and the service providers, there is no necessarily a way of enforcing everything. We want quality food, we want cost benefit, and therefore the issue has to be dealt with in coordination with other departments. So with that, let me say we do appreciate your support, and let me also say that we are pretty aware of the problem of chronic underfunding. We are very conscious, and hopefully with time as the economy improves, we'll also get recovery from that process, but we'll do everything to protect the services as best we can. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, Honorable Deputy Minister Joe Pasha, DG Buthelezi, and the team. As it was said at the beginning, Honorable Minister, we do appreciate the full bench before ourselves, and we can only join you and South Africans in saluting the frontline workers who have taken us to where we are, and ensuring that we traverse this path with least negative health implications, and many of the South Africans being protected. So thank you very much, and definitely it's one department that has always heeded the call to appear before the committee. Thank you very much, and let's allow you and the team to go back to the field and do what you have been doing, but it's highly appreciated. Honorable members, I think that that takes care of this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Darren, what do we do? Go to the minutes. Darren?
Chairperson, no.
Okay, I saw
We
you
only
sent
have
it.
minutes on the agenda.
Okay, I saw the minutes that you wasn't. Okay, that's fine. Are there any announcements?
Nothing from me, Chairperson. Our next meeting is next week, Tuesday, with Department of Defense and Department of Correctional Services.
Okay, other members, I think you heard our next meeting is next week, Tuesday, but there are mini plenaries in the afternoon, and let's attend. Thank you very much for engaging the departments. It was quite a busy morning today, and I think this takes us to the end of this meeting. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.